Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Good evening. My name is Evan Torres, and the story I'm about to share with you took place during the summer of 2019. The story occurred on the highway near Big Bend National Park in West Texas. I have changed my mind about this story numerous times over the past few years. But speaking with Noah, the friend who was there with me on the night this story took place, has convinced us both that you folks out there have a right to know about the event on the other side of the Rio Grande. First, let me give some background information on what we were doing out in the desert. I was a delivery driver for a distribution firm based out of El Paso, making regular deliveries into some of the smaller towns strung out through the desert. Noah was a contract photographer, always on the lookout for the big picture of the American Southwest. He'd been bugging me for a long time to ride along one of my overnight routes so he could get some pictures of the desert at night. Some pictures of the stars without all the light pollution from El Paso. That particular night, we left El Paso around 9 in the evening. The plan was simple enough. I had 3 deliveries to make at different ranches and supply stations between there and Presidio, then we'd grab some breakfast in Marfa on the way back. Noah brought his camera equipment, a couple of thermoses of coffee, and that enthusiasm he always had when he was chasing a new project. I remember him being excited about the moon that night. It was nearly new, which meant darker skies and better star photography. The first 2 stops went fine. Standard deliveries to ranch supply depots, in and out in 20 minutes each. By the time we were heading toward the 3rd location, it was past midnight. The highway down there is something else if you've never driven it. It's this long, winding 2-lane road that hugs the terrain, with the Chihuahuan Desert stretching out on one side and these rocky hills on the other. Cell service is spotty at best, and you can go 30 miles without seeing another vehicle. Noah had his window down, letting that dry desert air blow through the cab. He kept his camera ready on his lap, occasionally pointing out geological formations or asking me to slow down so he could get a shot. I didn't mind. The company paid me by the job, not the hour, and it was nice having someone to talk to on these lonely stretches. We were about 15 miles outside of Presidio when Noah first noticed something odd. He'd been looking out his window, camera raised toward the southern sky, when he suddenly lowered it and leaned forward. "Hey," he said, his voice different, more focused. "You see that?" I glanced over but couldn't see what he was looking at through his window. "See what?" "Out over the river, there's a light." I knew he meant the Rio Grande. The highway ran roughly parallel to it through that section, sometimes getting as close as a quarter mile. I looked through my windshield but didn't see anything unusual. Just the dark outline of the landscape against the slightly lighter sky. "Probably someone camping," I said. "Or maybe border patrol with a spotlight." "No, it's not like that." Noah had his camera up now, adjusting settings. "It's higher up, and it's just sitting there." That got my attention. I slowed the truck down a bit, trying to see what he was talking about. The road was climbing slightly, giving us a better vantage point. And that's when I saw it too. About 2 miles ahead and off to the south, there was a light hanging in the air above the river valley. It looked like a bright white sphere, perfectly still. My first thought was a helicopter, maybe with a searchlight, but there was no sound carrying across the desert. And the light wasn't moving the way helicopter lights move. It was just there, stationary, like someone had hung a bright bulb in the middle of the sky. "That's weird," I said, which was probably the understatement of the year. Noah was already shooting photos through his open window, the rapid clicks of his camera shutter breaking the silence. "I can't get a good angle from here. Can we pull over?" I was already looking for a place to stop. About a quarter-mile ahead, there was a turnout where the road maintenance crews sometimes parked their equipment. I pulled the truck into it and killed the engine. The sudden silence was almost startling. You don't realize how much noise a diesel engine makes until it stops. We both got out, and Noah immediately set up his tripod, mounting his camera and aiming it toward the light. I walked a few steps away from the truck, trying to get a better look. The light was still there, maybe 3 or 4 miles away now, hanging motionless about 200 feet above what I knew was the river valley. It was brighter than any star, brighter than Venus or Jupiter, but it wasn't twinkling. It was steady, pure white light. "What do you think it is?" Noah asked, not looking away from his camera. "No idea." I pulled out my phone, thinking maybe I could get some video, but of course there was no signal out here. "You getting good shots?" "I'm getting something." He adjusted his tripod slightly. "But here's the thing, man. Look through the viewfinder." I walked over and looked through his camera. He had it zoomed in as far as it would go, focused on the light. And that's when I saw something that made my skin crawl. Through the camera, I could see the light perfectly clearly, but I could also see the stars behind it. The light wasn't blocking anything. It was like it was barely there, somehow both intensely bright and transparent at the same time. "You see that?" Noah's voice was barely above a whisper. "Yeah, that's not right." We stood there for what felt like several minutes, just watching. The light didn't move. It didn't pulse or change color. It just hung there in the sky, silent and impossible. I'd been driving these routes for 3 years and had never seen anything like it. I'd seen strange things in the desert before. Dust devils that looked eerie in the headlights, unusual cloud formations, even ball lightning once. But this was different. Then Noah said something that made my blood run cold. "Evan, look at your watch." I glanced down at my wrist. My watch read 1:47 a.m. I looked back up at Noah, confused. "When did we pull over?" he asked. I thought about it. We'd made our second delivery around 11:30, then driven for about an hour before seeing the light. We couldn't have pulled over any later than 12:45. "Maybe 1:45? That's what I thought. Noah lowered his camera, and in the dim starlight I could see his face was pale. "But look at my camera's timestamp." He turned the camera screen toward me. The last photo he'd taken was stamped 1:46 a.m. But the first photo he'd taken after we pulled over showed 12:41 a.m. According to his camera, we'd been standing there for over an hour, but it felt like 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the most. "That's wrong," I said, even though I was looking right at the evidence. "That can't be right. Check your phone." I pulled it out again. Still no signal, but the time matched my watch. 1:47 a.m. I looked at the truck's dashboard clock through the windshield. Same time. "Maybe your camera's clock is off," I suggested, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. Noah shook his head. "I set it to network time before we left El Paso. It syncs with the GPS." We stood there in silence, both of us trying to process what this meant. An hour. We'd lost an entire hour, and neither of us could remember anything except standing there watching that light. My mouth felt dry, and it wasn't from the desert air. "We should go," I said finally. "I've got one more delivery to make." "What about the light?" I looked back toward it. It was still there, unchanged. "What about it? What are we going to do, drive over there? That's miles of rough terrain in the dark, probably on the Mexican side of the river. And even if we could get close to it, then what?" Noah was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, you're right." but he took a few more photos before packing up his equipment. We got back in the truck, and I started the engine. As we pulled back onto the highway, I kept checking my rearview mirror, watching the light recede behind us. It stayed motionless for about 2 miles, and then, just as we were coming around a bend that would take it out of view, it blinked out. Not like it moved away or dimmed, it just vanished, like someone had flipped a switch. "Did you see that?" Noah twisted in his seat, looking back. "Yeah." Neither of us said anything else for the next 10 miles. I made my final delivery at a supply station just outside Presidio, and the whole time I was unloading the cargo, I kept glancing up at the sky. Everything looked normal. Essays, the faint glow of the town in the distance, the dark line of mountains to the south. But I felt unsettled in a way I couldn't quite explain. We didn't go to Marfa for breakfast. By the time I finished the delivery, it was almost 3 in the morning, and neither of us was hungry. We drove back to El Paso in near silence, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Every time a car passed us going the other direction, its headlights seemed too bright, almost painful. Every sound seemed amplified, the hum of the tires on asphalt, the rattle of the loose change in the cup holder, the whistle of wind through the door seals. When Noah finally spoke, we were about 40 miles outside of El Paso. "I don't feel right," he said. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Like, have you ever had surgery? That feeling when you wake up from anesthesia and you know time has passed but you can't account for it. It feels like that." I knew exactly what he meant because I felt it too. There was this weird gap in my memory, not like I'd forgotten something, but like something had been carefully removed, leaving just this smooth blank space. I could remember seeing the light, remember looking through Noah's camera, remember the conversation about the missing time. But between those moments there was nothing, just absence. "Maybe we're tired," I suggested. "Long night, weird situation. Our brains are probably just messing with us." Maybe. But Noah didn't sound convinced, and honestly, neither was I. When I dropped Noah off at his apartment in El Paso around dawn, he grabbed his camera bag from the back seat and hesitated before closing the door. "I'm going to go through these photos," he said. "See if there's anything unusual. You want me to send you copies?" Yeah, send them over." "And Evan, let's maybe not mention this to anyone. Not yet. Not until we figure out what we actually saw." I nodded, agreed. But as I drove home in the early morning light, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. The world looked the same. Same buildings, same streets, same sky. But I felt different, disconnected somehow, like I was watching everything through glass. I got home, showered, and fell into bed, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that light hanging over the river valley, bright and impossible. I kept trying to remember what had happened during that missing hour, but there was nothing to remember. Just that blank space where memory should be. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a message from Noah. He'd attached several of the photos from the night before. I opened them on my laptop, zooming in, studying every detail. The first few photos showed exactly what we'd seen. A bright white sphere hanging in the sky above the dark landscape. But as I scrolled through the images, I noticed something odd. In the earlier photos, the light appeared more solid, more defined. But in the later ones, it looked increasingly translucent, like Noah had described. You could see stars through it, and in the last photo before it disappeared, it was barely visible at all. Just a faint smudge of light against the darkness. But that wasn't the strangest thing. In 3 of the photos, if you looked very carefully at the bottom right corner, there was something else. A shadow, maybe, or a reflection. It looked almost like a human figure standing in the desert. But the angle was wrong. The figure appeared to be too tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet, and the proportions were off. The arms seemed too long, the head too large. I called Noah immediately. "You see it too?" he answered, not even saying hello. "The thing in the corner? Yeah, what is that?" "I have no idea. I've been staring at these photos for hours. At first I thought it was just a shadow from the tripod or something, but it's not in all the photos. Just those 3, and it seems to move between shots. Could it be another person? Out there, in the middle of nowhere at 1 in the morning, and that size?" Noah paused. "I enhanced the images as much as I could. I'm sending you those versions now. Look at them and tell me what you think." The enhanced photos arrived a minute later. Noah had increased the contrast and brightness, sharpened the details. The figure was clearer now, and what I saw made my hands shake. It definitely looked humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But the details were wrong. The head was too smooth, too rounded. The arms hung too low, past where knees would be. And in the sharpest of the 3 photos you could just make out what might have been eyes. Large, dark ovals that seemed to catch and reflect the starlight. I felt sick. My apartment suddenly felt too warm, too close. I opened a window, letting in the afternoon air, but it didn't help. That feeling of disconnection I'd had all morning intensified. I looked at my hands, at my reflection in the laptop screen, and for just a moment, I didn't recognize myself. "Evan?" Noah's voice on the phone sounded distant. "You still there?" "Yeah, sorry, this is just... I know. Listen, I think we need to go back." "What? Why?" "Because I need to know what happened during that hour. Don't you? I've been researching missing time experiences, and they're more common than you'd think. Usually near military installations or along certain corridors where there have been multiple sightings. And you know what? Big Bend in the border region? There have been dozens of reports over the years, maybe hundreds." I didn't want to go back. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to leave this alone, to forget about it, to go on with my life. But Noah was right. I needed to know. That blank space in my memory was like an itch I couldn't scratch, and the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow night. I don't have any shoots scheduled, and you said you're off until Wednesday, right?" "Yeah." "Then let's do it. We'll go back to that exact spot, set up cameras, recording equipment. Maybe we'll see it again. Maybe we won't, but at least we'll know we tried." I agreed, though every part of me was saying it was a bad idea. We made plans to meet the next evening, and I spent the rest of that day trying to act normal. I went grocery shopping, did laundry, called my sister to check in on her kids. But the whole time my mind was elsewhere, replaying those moments by the river, trying to force my memory to show me what happened during that missing hour. That night, I had the first dream. I was standing in the desert, but it wasn't quite right. The colors were wrong. Everything had this blue-green tint, like I was seeing through a filter. The stars were too bright, too close, and they were moving in patterns that made my head hurt to watch. I could hear something, not quite a voice, more like a vibration that I felt in my chest, and I had the overwhelming sense that something was watching me from very far away. I woke up at 3:17 a.m., my sheets soaked with sweat, my heart pounding. The apartment was quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I got up, checked all the locks, looked out every window. Nothing. Just the normal nighttime sounds of the city. Distant traffic, an air conditioner humming, someone's dog barking. But when I went back to bed, I noticed something on my forearm that I could swear wasn't there before. 3 small marks, perfectly circular, arranged in a triangle pattern. They didn't hurt, didn't itch, just sat there on my skin like tiny brand marks. I touched them, and they were slightly raised, like old scars, but I couldn't remember getting them. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next evening, Noah picked me up in his beat-up Honda Civic. He'd packed the back seat with camera equipment. Multiple cameras, tripods, audio recorders, even a night vision camera he'd borrowed from another photographer friend. He looked as tired as I felt, with dark circles under his eyes. "You sleep?" I asked as I got in. "Not really. You?" "Same." I showed him the marks on my arm. "You got anything like this?" He pulled up his sleeve, and there they were. 3 identical marks, same pattern, same placement. We stared at each other for a long moment. What the hell is happening to us? Noah's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know, but maybe we'll find out tonight." The drive down to Big Bend seemed longer than it had 2 nights ago. The sun was setting as we left El Paso, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. Noah had his radio tuned to a station out of Ciudad Juarez, and some talk show host was discussing recent UFO sightings in the region. According to him, there had been an uptick in reports over the past few months. Lights in the sky, electrical disturbances, livestock behaving strangely. "You think any of that's real?" Noah asked. "Or just people seeing things? 2 days ago, I would have said they were seeing things. Now?" I shrugged. Now I don't know what's real anymore. We reached the turnout around 10 p.m., the same spot where we'd pulled over before. Noah had brought a portable floodlight, and we used it to set up his equipment. 2 cameras on tripods pointing towards the river valley, one pointing back toward the road, and the night vision camera on a separate mount. He also set up audio recorders and what he called an EMF detector, something paranormal investigators supposedly use to detect electromagnetic fields. "I don't really believe in this stuff," he said as he calibrated it, "but I figured it couldn't hurt. If that light shows up again, and it's putting out any kind of electromagnetic radiation, this should pick it up." Once everything was set up, we turned off the floodlight and sat in the darkness, waiting. The desert at night is never truly silent. There's always the sound of wind moving through brush, insects chirping, the occasional call of a night bird. But that night it felt quieter than usual, heavier somehow, like the air itself was waiting. "Tell me something," Noah said after about an hour of silence. "Before all this happened, did you believe in UFOs?" I thought about it. I believed that there were things people saw that they couldn't explain. Whether those things were alien spacecraft or military tests or just atmospheric phenomena, I never really cared enough to have an opinion. Why? Because I used to think the whole thing was ridiculous. People seeing swamp gas or secret military planes and deciding it must be aliens because that's more exciting than the mundane truth. But now, he gestured toward his cameras. Now I don't know. What we saw, that missing time, these marks on our arms, none of that fits with any conventional explanation. Maybe there is a conventional explanation. Maybe we just haven't thought of it yet. Maybe. But Noah didn't sound convinced. Around midnight, the EMF detector started beeping. Softly at first, then more insistently. Noah jumped up and checked the reading. "It's picking up something. The electromagnetic field is increasing." He looked toward the river valley. "Do you feel anything?" I did. The same feeling from 2 nights ago. That sense of being watched, of something paying attention to us from far away. The air felt different too, charged somehow, like right before a thunderstorm. "Start recording," I said. Noah hit the record button on all the cameras at once. We stood there in the darkness, our eyes scanning the sky, waiting. The EMF detector was going crazy now, its beeping almost continuous, and then there it was. The light, it didn't fade in or approach from a distance. One moment the sky was empty, and the next, The light was there, hanging in almost exactly the same position as before. Bright, white, motionless. My breath caught in my throat. "Oh my God," Noah whispered. "It's real. It's really here." The light hung there for maybe 30 seconds, and then something happened that I never could have anticipated. It started descending. Slowly, deliberately, dropping down toward the river valley. As it descended, I could see that it wasn't just a sphere of light. There was structure to it, though I couldn't quite make out the details. It seemed to shift and change as I looked at it, like my eyes couldn't quite focus on what they were seeing. The temperature dropped suddenly. I could see my breath now, even though it had been probably 80 degrees just a minute ago. My skin felt electric, like every hair on my body was standing up. Next to me, Noah was recording everything with his handheld camera, his hands surprisingly steady. The light continued its descent until it was maybe 50 feet above the desert floor, about half a mile away from our position. And then it stopped, just hung there, illuminating the landscape around it with that strange cold white light. I could see details now that I couldn't see before. The shapes of rocks and bushes, the terrain rolling toward the river. And I could see something else. There were figures moving in that light. Not walking exactly, but gliding, maybe 4 or 5 of them. They were too far away to make out clearly, but they were tall, much taller than a person, and they moved in a way that seemed wrong, too fluid, too smooth. "Do you see them?" My voice sounded strange in my own ears. "Yeah." Noah's camera was still recording. "What are they doing?" As if in answer to his question, one of the figures turned toward us. I couldn't see details, couldn't make out eyes or a face, but I knew it was looking at us. And the moment it did, everything changed. The world seemed to tilt sideways. The stars spun overhead, and the ground felt unstable under my feet. I heard a sound, not with my ears, but inside my head, like a frequency tuned just below the range of normal hearing. It vibrated in my skull, in my chest, in my bones, and then images started flooding into my mind, coming so fast I couldn't process them. I saw the earth from space, beautiful and blue against the darkness. I saw ancient civilizations building monuments that aligned with stars. I saw cave paintings of strange figures with large eyes and elongated bodies. I saw lights in the sky above cities, above oceans, above deserts. I saw things I had no context for, structures that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, symbols that hurt to look at, vast spaces between stars where something waited. And then I saw us, Noah and I, standing by the truck 2 nights ago, frozen in place while that hour ticked by. I saw those tall figures approaching us, studying us, their large, dark eyes reflecting no light. I saw them touching our arms, leaving those triangular marks. I saw them doing something, examining us, changing us, and then carefully placing us back, adjusting our memories, smoothing over the rough edges so we wouldn't remember. But something had gone wrong. Some small part of the memory had leaked through, left those gaps that we could sense but couldn't fill. And now, because we'd come back, because we'd gone looking for answers, they were giving them to us. The question was, why? The images stopped as suddenly as they'd started, and I found myself on my knees in the dirt, gasping for air. Noah was next to me in the same position. The light was still there, but it was rising now, ascending back into the sky. The figures were gone, or maybe they'd never been there at all. Maybe they'd been here the whole time, just on the edge of visibility. "Did you see that?" Noah's voice was shaking. "Please tell me you saw that too." "Yeah." I managed to get to my feet, though my legs felt weak. "I saw it." The light was climbing higher now, moving faster. It rose to about the same altitude it had been at when we first saw it, and then, just like before, it blinked out. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only the normal darkness of the desert night. We stood there for several minutes, neither of us speaking, both of us trying to process what had just happened. The EMF detector had gone silent. The air felt normal again, the temperature rising back to its usual desert warmth. It was like nothing had happened except for the evidence of the cameras and the memories now burned into our minds. "We need to leave," I finally said. "Right now." Noah didn't argue. We packed up his equipment in a fraction of the time it had taken to set it up, throwing things into the car without caring about organization. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely help. All I wanted was to get away from this place, to get back to the highway, to get back to civilization and light and other people. As Noah drove us back toward El Paso, I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see that light following us. But the sky behind us remained empty and dark. The drive felt surreal, like we were moving through a dream. Neither of us spoke for the first hour. What was there to say? How do you put into words what we'd just experienced? Finally, as we were passing through Fort Hancock, Noah broke the silence. "Those images," he said quietly. "In your head. Did you understand them?" "Some of them, maybe." I rubbed my eyes, trying to organize my thoughts. It felt like they were trying to show us something, about how long they've been here, about what they've been doing. Observing us. Studying us. Noah's grip on the steering wheel tightened. For how long? Hundreds of years? Thousands? I don't know. But I got the sense that whatever they are, wherever they're from, this isn't new to them. We're not the first ones they've contacted. I paused, remembering more of those strange images. And I don't think we'll be the last. We reached El Paso as the sun was coming up, painting the city in shades of gold and pink. Normal people were starting their normal days, going to work, taking kids to school, grabbing coffee. They had no idea what was out there in the desert, hanging in the sky above the Rio Grande. And maybe that was better. Maybe ignorance really was bliss. Noah dropped me off at my apartment, and before I got out, I turned to him. "What are you going to do with the footage?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring straight ahead. "I don't know. Part of me wants to share it, put it online, show people what's really out there. But another part of me thinks that's exactly what we're not supposed to do. Like those images we saw, that was for us, not for everyone." Yeah, I understood exactly what he meant. Maybe we should just keep this to ourselves. Maybe. He looked at me then. "But if I die tomorrow, if something happens to me, I want someone to know. I've backed up all the files, encrypted them, and I'm sending you the password. If I'm gone, you decide what to do with them." I nodded, feeling the weight of that responsibility settling on my shoulders. "Same here. I'll write everything down, everything I can remember, just in case." I got out of the car and watched Noah drive away. Then I went up to my apartment, sat down at my laptop, and started typing. This account you're reading now, this is what I wrote that morning. Every detail I could remember, every image that had been placed in my mind, every moment of that missing hour that I could now recall. Because here's what I know now. We're not alone. We've never been alone. There are things out there, in the darkness above the desert, that are beyond our current understanding. They've been watching us, studying us, maybe even guiding us in ways we don't recognize. And sometimes, for reasons I can't fully comprehend, they let us see them. That was 5 years ago. I don't drive those routes anymore. I took a different job, working local deliveries. Nothing that takes me out into the desert at night. Noah moved to Colorado, said he needed to get away from the border. We still talk sometimes, but we never discuss what happened. There's an understanding between us, an agreement that some things are better left alone. But I still have those marks on my arm. They've never faded, never gone away. And sometimes, usually around 1:47 in the morning, I wake up with the feeling that I'm being watched. I'll go to my window and look out at the night sky, and I'll wonder if they're still out there, still observing, still waiting. Sometimes I see things, a light that moves too fast to be a plane, a shadow that's too tall to be human, a pattern in the stars that seems too deliberate to be random. And when I see these things, I remember that night by the Rio Grande. I remember the light descending, the figures moving in that cold illumination, the images flooding into my mind. And I remember the most disturbing part, the piece I haven't told anyone else, not even Noah. Because in those images, mixed in with all the other visions, I saw something else. I saw the future. Not my future specifically, but humanity's. I saw us reaching out into space, building ships, traveling to other worlds. And everywhere we went, we found traces of them. Evidence that they'd been there first, watching, waiting, preparing the way. We think we're explorers, pioneers discovering new frontiers, but what if we're just following a path that was laid out for us long ago? What if every step forward we take is one they anticipated, one they guided us toward? What if we've never had free will at all, just the illusion of it? These are the questions that keep me up at night. These are the thoughts that haunt me when I look up at the stars. Because once you've seen what I've seen, once you know what I know, you can't go back. You can't unknow it. You can't unsee it. The light over the Rio Grande is still out there. I know it is. People still report seeing it. Truck drivers, border patrol agents, locals who've lived in the area their whole lives. They see that bright white sphere hanging motionless over the desert, and they wonder what it is. Most of them come up with explanations that let them sleep at night. Weather balloons, military exercises, atmospheric phenomena. But some of them know better. Some of them get curious and go looking for answers. And if they're persistent enough, if they come back to the same spot at the right time, they might get those answers. They might see what we saw, feel what we felt, learn what we learned. And then they'll have to live with it, just like we do. They'll have to carry the knowledge that we're part of something much larger than ourselves, something that's been unfolding for longer than human civilization has existed. They'll have to reconcile their place in a universe that's far stranger and more complex than anything they imagined. That's the burden of knowing. That's the price of seeking the truth. I still have Noah's encrypted files, the videos, the photos, the audio recordings from that second night. Sometimes I think about decrypting them, about looking at that footage again, about confirming what I remember. But I never do, because I don't need to see it again to know it was real. Those marks on my arm are reminder enough. Instead, I've written this account. These words are my testimony, my witness to what happened on those 2 nights near Big Bend National Park. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm not asking you to do anything with this information. I'm just putting it out there, adding it to the countless other testimonies from countless other people who've seen things they couldn't explain. Maybe you've seen something too. Maybe you've had your own experience with the lights in the sky, the missing time, the inexplicable marks. If you have, then you understand. You know what it's like to carry this knowledge, to be changed by it, to see the world differently than you did before. And if you haven't, if you're reading this thinking I'm crazy or making it all up, that's fine. I might have thought the same thing before it happened to me. But I'll tell you this. Be careful what you look for. Be careful what questions you ask. Because sometimes the universe answers. And those answers might not be what you expected. They might not even be answers you want. The Rio Grande still flows through the desert, silent and dark. The stars still wheel overhead, ancient and indifferent. And somewhere out there, in the space between what we know and what we fear, that light still hangs in the sky, waiting, watching, remembering. I don't know if I'll ever go back. Part of me wants to, needs to understand more, needs to see if there's anything else they want to show me. But a larger part of me knows that some mysteries are better left unsolved, some questions better left unasked. Because once you step through that door, once you accept that invitation to see beyond the veil, you can never fully return to the person you were before. My name is Evan Torres. This is my story. This is what happened to me and my friend Noah on 2 nights near the Rio Grande in the summer of 2019. I've told you everything I remember, everything I can verify. The rest, the meaning of it all, the implications, the truth behind the truth, that's for you to decide. Just remember, if you're ever driving through West Texas late at night and you see a bright white light hanging motionless over the river valley, you have a choice to make. You can drive on, write it off as something mundane and forget about it. Or you can stop. You can watch. You can wait to see what happens next. But once you make that choice, there's no going back. Once you've seen the light, really seen it, you're marked, changed. You become part of something larger than yourself, something that spans centuries and crosses the boundaries between known and unknown. I made my choice. Noah made his. Now it's your turn. The light over the Rio Grande is waiting. But there's more to this story. Something I've been hesitant to share even in this account. Something that happened 6 months after that second encounter. Something that made me realize the experience wasn't over. Maybe it never will be. It was February of 2020. Early morning, around 3 a.m. I was in my apartment in El Paso, sound asleep, when I woke up to find myself standing in my living room. Not sitting up in bed, groggy and confused. I was fully standing, barefoot on the cold tile floor, facing my window. I had no memory of getting up, no memory of walking from my bedroom. One moment I was asleep, the next I was standing there in the darkness. My first thought was that I'd been sleepwalking, something I'd never done before in my life. But as my mind cleared, I realized something was wrong. The air in my apartment felt different, thicker somehow, charged with that same electric quality I'd felt in the desert. And there was a sound, so low it was almost below hearing, a vibration that I felt in my chest more than heard with my ears. I turned on a lamp, and that's when I saw it. On my coffee table, there was something that hadn't been there when I went to bed. A small metallic object, maybe 3 inches across, perfectly geometric. It looked like a dodecahedron, 12 pentagonal faces, but the metal had this strange quality to it. It seemed to shift colors as I looked at it, going from silver to gold to something that wasn't quite either. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. It was surprisingly light, almost weightless, and warm to the touch. As I held it, I felt that familiar sensation, the one from the desert, the feeling of being connected to something vast and incomprehensible. Images started forming in my mind again, but these were different. They weren't historical or educational. They were personal. I saw myself as a child, maybe 5 years old, playing in my grandmother's backyard in Juarez. And there, in the corner of the memory I'd somehow forgotten, was a light in the sky. Small, distant, but unmistakably the same light I'd seen over the river. How had I forgotten that? I saw myself at 12, camping with my father in the mountains, waking up in the middle of the night to find 3 hours had passed in what felt like minutes. Another forgotten memory, another smooth gap where something had been removed. They'd been watching me my whole life. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't random. I wasn't just someone who happened to be driving through the desert at the right time. I'd been selected, chosen for reasons I couldn't understand. And Noah, I wondered if he'd been chosen too, if his life was full of the same forgotten encounters, the same carefully edited memories. I set the object back on the coffee table and grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling with the screen as I pulled up Noah's number. It was 3 in the morning in Colorado, but I didn't care. He answered on the first ring. "You're awake," he said. Not a question, a statement of fact. "You too?" "Yeah." I could hear him moving around, the creak of floorboards. I woke up standing in my kitchen. "And there's something here, Evan. Something they left. Metallic? Geometric? You got one too?" His voice cracked slightly. "What does it mean? Why are they doing this?" I looked at the object on my table, watching the colors shift and change. "I don't know, but I've been remembering things. Things from when I was a kid. Things I shouldn't have forgotten." "Same here." Noah was quiet for a moment. "I saw my mother. She died when I was 8, car accident on Highway 54. But in this memory, right before the accident, there was a light. She pulled over, told me to stay in the car, and she walked toward it. I remember now. She was gone for maybe 20 minutes, and when she came back, she was crying. She wouldn't tell me why. 2 days later, she was dead. The implications of that hung in the air between us. You think they knew? I think they know everything, Evan. Past, present, future. I think they exist outside of time the way we understand it, and I think they've been guiding our lives, all our lives, towards some specific purpose we can't see yet. I wanted to argue, to say that was impossible, that we had free will and control over our own destinies. But I couldn't, because deep down, looking at that impossible object on my coffee table, I knew he was right. "What do we do with these things?" I asked. "I don't know. Keep them, destroy them, study them?" Noah sighed. "I've been thinking about going public with everything. The photos, the videos, our testimony. People need to know what's happening. They'll think we're crazy, or lying, or both. Probably, but what's the alternative? We just carry this alone for the rest of our lives. We let them keep manipulating us, changing our memories, leaving us these artifacts without ever understanding why." I didn't have an answer for that. We talked for another hour, going through our recovered memories, trying to find patterns, trying to understand the scope of what had been done to us. By the time we hung up, the sun was starting to rise, painting my apartment in shades of pale gold. I kept the object. I still have it, actually, hidden in a lockbox in my closet. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I take it out and hold it. And every time I do, I remember a little bit more. Small things, mostly. Seeing lights in the sky as a teenager, finding unexplained marks on my body, losing hours here and there that I'd always attributed to daydreaming or distraction. But they add up. They paint a picture of a life that's been intersected, again and again, by something beyond my understanding. Noah did try to go public in a way. He created a website, posted some of the photos and videos, wrote up his account of what happened. But the internet being what it is, it got lost in the noise. Thousands of UFO sightings are reported every year, hundreds of videos posted, dozens of testimonies shared. His became just another story in an ocean of stories, most of which are dismissed as hoaxes or misidentifications. The few people who did pay attention were mostly the wrong kind of people. Conspiracy theorists who wanted to fit our experience into their pre-existing narratives about government cover-ups and alien invasions. They didn't care about the truth. They just wanted ammunition for their beliefs. Noah took the website down after 6 months. Not because he stopped believing, but because he realized that the truth, when it's this strange and this personal, doesn't translate well to a mass audience. I think about the desert a lot, about that stretch of highway near the Rio Grande where everything changed. I've driven past it a few times since then, never stopping, just passing through, and each time I feel that pull, that urge to pull over, to wait, to see if the light will appear again. So far, I've resisted, but the pull gets stronger every time. Last month, something else happened. I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize, somewhere in New Mexico based on the area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Evan Torres?" A woman's voice, older, with a slight Spanish accent. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Rosa Delgado. You don't know me, but I know what you saw near Big Bend. The light over the river." My blood ran cold. "How do you—" "Because I saw it too, 30 years ago. And my father saw it before that in the 60s. And his mother, my grandmother, she saw it in 1947. It runs in families, Mr. Torres. This thing, whatever it is, it comes back to the same people, the same bloodlines." I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to look into your family history. Ask your parents if they've ever seen anything strange. Ask your grandparents if they're still alive. I think you'll find that you're not the first Torres to have this experience, and you won't be the last." She gave me her number, told me to call if I ever wanted to talk about it, to compare notes. Then she hung up. I sat there for a long time after, just staring at my phone, trying to process what she'd said. I haven't called her back yet. Part of me wants to, desperately needs to understand if what she said is true. But another part of me is afraid of what I might learn. Because if this is generational, if this has been happening to my family for decades or longer, then what does that mean about my future? About any children I might have? Are we all just part of some long-term study, specimens being observed across generations? My father died 5 years before my desert encounter, so I can't ask him, but my mother is still alive, living in Albuquerque. I've thought about calling her, asking her the questions Rosa suggested. But every time I pick up the phone, I hesitate. Because once I ask those questions, once I potentially confirm that this goes deeper than just me and Noah, there's no going back to any semblance of normal life. The marks on my arm have changed. They're still there, still in that triangular pattern, but they've gotten slightly darker over the years. And sometimes, in certain light, they almost seem to glow. I showed them to a dermatologist once, claimed they were old scars I'd never gotten checked out. She said they were unusual, that the tissue looked like it had been altered on a cellular level, but she couldn't explain what would cause that. She wanted to do a biopsy. I never went back. I've started keeping a journal now, documenting everything. Every strange dream, every recovered memory. Every time I wake up with missing time or find myself standing somewhere with no memory of how I got there. It happens more frequently now, at least once a month. Always in the middle of the night, always around that same time, 1:47 a.m., the time we lost that first hour. Noah keeps his own records too. We compare notes sometimes, looking for patterns, and we've found them. The encounters increase around certain dates, alignments of planets, meteor showers, solstices and equinoxes. It's like whatever they are, they follow a schedule we're only beginning to understand. Sometimes I wonder what they want from us. Information? DNA? Study of human behavior and evolution? Or is it something more benign, maybe even protective? What if they've been watching over humanity, guiding us? keeping us from destroying ourselves. The images they showed us suggested a long relationship, one that stretches back to our earliest days as a species. But then I remember the fear, the absolute terror I felt when that figure turned toward us in the desert, when those images flooded my mind without permission, when I realized that my memories weren't entirely my own. And I wonder if their intentions matter. Even if they mean well, even if they're trying to help, the violation remains. They've taken our autonomy, our memories, our sense of self. They've marked us, changed us, made us into something other than what we were. I don't know if I'll ever get answers to these questions. I don't know if anyone will. But I keep looking up at the sky, keep watching for that light, keep waiting for the next encounter. Because despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the violation, part of me needs to know more. Part of me is drawn to them, connected to them in a way I can't fully explain or resist. That's the real burden of knowing. Not just living with what you've learned, but living with the need to learn more. It's like an addiction, a compulsion that grows stronger over time. The more you know, the more you need to know. And they understand that. Maybe that's part of their method. Show you just enough to hook you, to make you come back, to make you willing participants in whatever they're doing. 3 weeks ago, I quit my job. I've saved up enough to last me a year, maybe more if I'm careful. I'm planning to spend that time in the desert, along the border, documenting everything I can find. Rosa has agreed to meet with me, to share her family's experiences. And I've reached out to others online, people who've had similar encounters in the same region. There are more of us than you'd think. Noah is coming down from Colorado next month. We're going back to that spot by the Rio Grande. Back to where it all started. We're bringing better equipment this time, better cameras, better recording devices. And we're going prepared to stay as long as it takes. Days, weeks, whatever it takes to see the light again, to get more answers. Maybe this is exactly what they want. Maybe, by pursuing this, we're playing right into their hands. But I've stopped caring about that. I need to know. I need to understand. And if that makes me their willing subject, their cooperative specimen, then so be it. The light over the Rio Grande is still out there, still waiting, still watching. And soon I'll be watching back. This is my testimony. This is my truth. Whatever happens next, I wanted this written down, documented, preserved. So that if I disappear, if something happens to me, someone will know. Someone will understand. The night sky holds secrets we're only beginning to glimpse. And those secrets are watching us back. My name is Evan Torres. And my story isn't over yet. My name is Luis Ramirez, and I need to tell you about something that happened on Highway 170 between Presidio and Terlingua on the night of October 14th, 2021. I've been a long-haul truck driver for 16 years, and I've driven through every state in the lower 48. I've seen all kinds of strange things on the road. Accidents that made no sense, weather that appeared out of nowhere, optical illusions that played tricks on your eyes. But what happened that night was different. It was something I can't explain, something I can't forget, and something that cost me 22 seconds of my life that I'll never get back. I was hauling refrigerated produce from El Paso to Uvalde, taking the scenic route along the border because my dispatcher said I had extra time and the main highways were backed up with construction. The load wasn't time-sensitive, just some organic vegetables for a grocery chain, so I didn't mind the detour. Highway 170 is one of those roads that people either love or hate. It winds along the Rio Grande with these spectacular views of the Chihuahuan Desert and the Sierra Rica Mountains across the river in Mexico. During the day, it's beautiful. At night, it's isolated and dark as hell. I left Presidio around 8 p.m. The The sun had just set, leaving that deep purple twilight that only lasts about 20 minutes in the desert. My truck was running smooth, the refrigeration unit humming away in the back, keeping those vegetables at exactly 38 degrees. I had my radio tuned to a station out of Ojinaga, some norteño music keeping me company. Cell service along that stretch is basically non-existent, so the radio was all I had. The road was empty. I hadn't seen another vehicle since leaving Presidio, which wasn't unusual for that route at night. Most truckers avoid it because it's slow going. Lots of curves, steep grades, narrow shoulders. But I liked the solitude. After 16 years of truck stops and highway traffic, sometimes you just want to be alone with your thoughts and the road. Around 9:30 p.m., I was about 15 miles outside of Lajitas when my radio started acting weird. The music began cutting in and out, replaced by static. Then the static took on this strange quality. It sounded almost rhythmic, like it was pulsing. I reached over to adjust the tuning, thinking maybe I was losing the signal as I went through the mountains. But before I could touch the dial, the radio went completely silent. Not static, not white noise, just complete silence, like someone had muted it. That's when I noticed the temperature gauge. The needle was dropping. Not the engine temperature, that was fine, but the ambient temperature display on my dashboard. It had been reading 73 degrees, which was about right for an October night in the desert. As I watched, it dropped to 69, then 65, then 61. In the span of maybe 10 seconds, the outside temperature had dropped 12 degrees. I could feel it too. The air coming through my vents suddenly felt cold, and I could see my breath fogging up in the cab. In the desert, in October. That shouldn't have been possible. I slowed down, my instincts telling me something was wrong. The road ahead looked normal, my headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating the white line on the shoulder and the rocky terrain on either side. But the air felt different. Heavy, charged with something I couldn't name. And then I saw the light. It appeared on my left, out over the river valley, maybe a quarter mile away. At first, I thought it was a helicopter. Border Patrol runs night operations through there all the time. But this light wasn't white or searchlight bright. It was orange, a deep amber orange like a sodium vapor lamp, and it was perfectly round. It hung in the air about 200 feet above the desert floor, completely motionless. I took my foot off the accelerator, letting the truck slow naturally. My eyes kept darting between the road and that light. It wasn't moving. No flickering. No swaying. Just hanging there in the darkness like someone had painted it on the sky. The rational part of my brain was trying to explain it. Maybe it was a drone with a powerful light. Maybe it was some kind of flare that got stuck in midair somehow. Maybe it was swamp gas, even though there are no swamps anywhere near West Texas. But none of those explanations felt right. I pulled the truck over to the shoulder. There was a small turnout there, probably meant for scenic viewing during the day. I put it in park, but left the engine running. The refrigeration unit was still humming in the back, but everything else felt too quiet. That radio silence was unnerving. Even static would have been better than the complete absence of sound. I opened my door and stepped down from the cab. The temperature drop was real. I could feel the cold air on my face, see my breath misting in front of me. The stars overhead were incredibly bright, the way they get in the desert when there's no light pollution. But that orange light was brighter than any star, and it was still just hanging there, unmoving. I've heard stories about UFOs. Who hasn't? Every truck driver has a tale about strange lights in the sky, weird encounters on lonely roads. I'd always figured most of them were bullshit, people seeing what they wanted to see or misidentifying mundane things. But standing there on that empty highway, looking at that impossible light, I understood why those stories existed. because when you see something that doesn't fit into your understanding of how the world works, your brain scrambles to make sense of it. The light began to move, not quickly, but deliberately. It drifted to the east, parallel to the highway, staying at the same altitude and the same distance from the road. I watched it for maybe 30 seconds, and then I did something I'm still not sure was smart or stupid. I got back in my truck, released the parking brake, and started following it. The road curved ahead, and I drove slowly, maybe 20 miles per hour, keeping that light in sight through my driver's side window. It matched my speed exactly. When I sped up slightly, it moved faster. When I slowed down, it slowed down. It was like it was tracking me, or I was tracking it. Or we were both caught in some kind of synchronized movement that neither of us controlled. My dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m. I remember looking at it specifically because I was trying to ground myself in concrete details. Time, speed, location. The truck's GPS showed my position on Highway 170, elevation 2,847 feet, heading east at 21 miles per hour. The light stopped, just froze in midair, and I instinctively hit my brakes. The truck came to a halt in the middle of the road. There was no one else around, no other vehicles, so I wasn't worried about blocking traffic. I sat there with the engine idling, watching the light. It began to descend, slowly, steadily, dropping down toward the desert floor. As it got lower, I could see that it wasn't just a point of light. There was structure to it, though I couldn't make out specific details. It looked almost like there was something solid behind the glow, something the light was emanating from. And then, everything changed. The light intensified, becoming almost blindingly bright for a fraction of a second. I squinted, raising my hand to shield my eyes, and in that moment, I don't know how to explain this next part. It felt like the universe hiccuped, like reality skipped a beat. One moment I was sitting in my truck with my hand raised, and the next moment I was still sitting in my truck with my hand raised, but something was different. The light was gone, just completely vanished. The temperature gauge showed 72 degrees again. The radio was back on, playing that same Norteño station. I looked at my dashboard clock. It read 9:47 p.m. The same time. Exactly the same time as before the light had intensified. But that couldn't be right. I'd watched the light descend, watched it get brighter. That had taken time, maybe 10 or 15 seconds. So why did my clock show the same time? I pulled out my phone. No signal, as expected. But I checked the time anyway. 9:47 p.m. I looked at my watch. 9:47 p.m. Everything was showing the same time, and it was the same time as before, whatever had just happened. I sat there for several minutes, my heart pounding, trying to understand what I'd experienced. Had I blacked out? Had I imagined the whole thing? But no, the memory was too vivid. I could still see that orange light in my mind, could still feel the cold air, could still remember the radio going silent. I put the truck in gear and continued driving. What else was I going to do? Pull over and try to make sense of the impossible? I had a delivery to make, and sitting on a dark highway in the middle of nowhere wasn't going to help me understand what had happened. I reached Lejitas 20 minutes later. There's a small gas station there that stays open until 11 p.m., and I pulled in to fuel up and clear my head. An old man was working the counter, and when I went in to pay, he looked at me strangely. "You all right, son?" he asked. "You look like you seen a ghost." "Just tired," I said. "Long drive." He nodded, but kept studying my face. "You come from Presidio way?" "Yeah." "See anything strange on the road?" The question caught me off guard. "Why do you ask?" He shrugged. "Had a border patrol officer stop in about an hour ago. Said his radio went dead for a bit out on 170. Said the temperature dropped like 30 degrees out of nowhere. Thought maybe you saw the same thing. I felt a chill run down my spine. What time was this? He was in here around 9, maybe 9:15. Said it happened just before that. I paid for my fuel and got back on the road. If a border patrol officer had experienced something similar around the same area, around the same time, then I wasn't crazy. Or if I was crazy, at least I wasn't alone. I made my delivery in Uvalde the next morning, right on schedule. Then I drove back to El Paso to my apartment, parked the truck at the depot and tried to sleep. But I kept seeing that orange light, kept feeling that moment when reality seemed to skip. 3 days later, I was back in El Paso, sitting in a coffee shop, when I got a message on Facebook from someone named Tara Gutierrez. The message said, "I heard you drove Highway 170 on October 14th. I need to talk to you about what you saw." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. My first instinct was to delete it. Some stranger reaching out about something I'd barely processed myself felt wrong. But curiosity got the better of me. I typed back, "Who are you and how did you know I was on that road?" Her response came within minutes. "I'm a data analyst. I work with GPS tracking systems for commercial vehicles. Your truck's GPS showed an anomaly that night. Please, this is important. Can we meet?" That's how I found myself sitting in a booth at a diner in East El Paso 2 days later, across from a woman in her early 30s with tired eyes and a laptop bag. Tara Gutierrez was thin, with long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she had the kind of intensity that made you pay attention when she spoke. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as soon as I sat down. "I know this is strange. You said my truck's GPS showed an anomaly. What does that mean?" She pulled out her laptop and opened it. "I work for a company that provides fleet management services. We monitor commercial vehicles, track their routes, fuel efficiency, driving patterns, all that. Your company is one of our clients." She turned the laptop toward me, showing a map with a route highlighted. "This is your drive on October 14th. See anything unusual?" I looked at the map. It showed Highway 170 from Presidio to Terlingua, my route clearly marked. But there was a section where the line broke, like the GPS signal had been lost for a brief period. "Your truck's GPS stopped transmitting for exactly 22 seconds, Tara said, from 9:47:03 p.m. to 9:47:25 p.m. During that time, we received no data, no location, no speed, nothing. Then it came back online exactly where it had dropped off, as if no time had passed at all." 22 seconds. I'd experienced what felt like 10 or 15 seconds of watching that light descend, but the actual gap in the GPS data was 22 seconds. "Equipment malfunction?" I suggested, though I didn't believe it. That was my first thought too. But here's the thing, you weren't the only one. She pulled up another screen, showing multiple routes on the same map. 4 other vehicles passed through that area within a 2-hour window that night. 3 of them showed the same anomaly. 22 seconds of missing data. Same timestamp, 9:47 p.m. I felt my mouth go dry. What kind of vehicles? 1 was a Border Patrol SUV. 1 was a delivery van. 1 was a private car. All of them lost GPS signal for exactly 22 seconds at exactly 9:47 p.m., all within a 3-mile radius of the same location. She paused. "I've been doing this work for 8 years. I've never seen anything like this." "Have you talked to the other drivers?" "I've tried. The Border Patrol officer won't return my calls. I think his department told him not to talk about it. The delivery driver said he doesn't remember anything unusual. The private car was a rental, and I can't track down who was driving it that night." I leaned back in the booth, processing this information. Why are you so interested in this? Tara closed her laptop and met my eyes. Because 3 months ago, I drove through the same area at night, and I lost 22 seconds too. The diner suddenly felt too bright, too loud. I could hear every conversation around us, every clink of silverware, every hiss of the coffee machine. What did you see? A light, orange, circular, hovering over the desert. I stopped my car and watched it. It descended toward the ground, and then she paused, searching for words. Then it was like someone fast-forwarded through a part of a video. One moment I was watching it, the next moment it was gone, and my car clock showed the same time as before. 22 seconds, I said. 22 seconds. She nodded. I've been monitoring GPS data for that area ever since, looking for more anomalies. You're the first confirmed case I've found since mine. The first person willing to talk to me about it. We sat in silence for a moment. Finally, I asked the question that had been haunting me. What do you think it is? I don't know, but I want to find out. She pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. I've been doing research. Reports of strange lights in that area go back decades. Mostly dismissed as ball lightning or atmospheric phenomena. But there's a pattern. The sightings cluster around certain dates: autumn equinox, spring equinox, winter solstice. October 14th, when you and I both saw the light, was 3 weeks after the autumn equinox. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of old newspaper articles, blog posts, even handwritten accounts. One article, from 1987, described a rancher who'd seen orange orbs over the Rio Grande. Another, from 2003, mentioned a tourist who'd photographed unexplained lights near Lajitas. There were dozens of reports, spanning nearly 40 years. They all described the same thing, Tara said. Orange or amber lights, usually spherical, hovering between 100 and 300 feet altitude, appearing for a few minutes before vanishing. And several of them mention missing time, minutes or hours they can't account for. But never exactly 22 seconds? That's what makes our cases unique. The older reports talk about longer periods, 15 minutes, half an hour, even 2 hours in one case. 22 seconds is so brief it could almost be written off as a mental lapse. Except the GPS doesn't lie. I looked at the reports, at all these people over all these years who'd seen something they couldn't explain. What do you want from me? I want to go back, Tara said. I want to set up monitoring equipment at that exact location and see if it happens again. The winter solstice is December 21st. Based on the pattern, there's a good chance we'll see activity around then. But I can't do it alone. I need someone who's been through this, someone who understands. I should have said no. I should have finished my coffee, wished her luck, and walked away. But something in me needed to know, needed to understand what had happened during those 22 seconds. What kind of equipment? Her eyes lit up. Cameras with precise timestamps, audio recorders, EMF detectors, GPS units from multiple manufacturers to rule out a single source malfunction. And I've got a friend who works at the university. He can lend us some specialized sensors that measure electromagnetic radiation and atmospheric pressure. When would we do this? The week of the winter solstice. We'd camp out there for 3 or 4 nights, record everything, see what happens. I thought about my schedule. I had vacation time saved up. And honestly, the idea of sitting at home for another 2 months, wondering about those 22 seconds, felt worse than trying to find answers. I'll do it. We spent the next hour going over details. Tara had already scouted the location, the exact spot where my GPS signal had dropped. There was a small, dirt road that led off Highway 170 to an old overlook point, probably built decades ago for tourists to view the Rio Grande Valley. It was perfect for setting up equipment. Elevated view, relatively flat ground, accessible but isolated. Over the next 2 months, Tara and I communicated regularly through encrypted messages. She didn't trust regular email, said she'd been doing research on government monitoring of UFO-related communications, and didn't want to draw attention. I thought she was being paranoid, but I went along with it. She sent me articles about similar phenomena worldwide. The Hessdalen lights in Norway, the Marfa lights in Texas, the Min Min lights in Australia. All of them involved unexplained illuminations appearing in remote areas, all of them with long histories of sightings. She'd developed a theory that these weren't random events, but followed specific patterns related to geological features, electromagnetic fields, and astronomical alignments. I contributed what I could, details about the topography of the area, the prevailing wind patterns, the typical weather conditions. I also reached out quietly to other truck drivers I knew, asking if they'd ever seen anything strange on Highway 170. Most said no, but 2 admitted to seeing weird lights over the years. Neither wanted to talk about it much. December 19th arrived, and I drove out to meet Tara at the overlook point. She was already there when I arrived in the late afternoon. Her small SUV parked at the edge of the dirt road, equipment cases stacked nearby. The temperature was in the mid-50s, and the sky was clear. Perfect conditions for observation. "Ready to catch a ghost?" she asked as I got out of my truck. "Ready to get some answers," I replied. We spent the next 3 hours setting up. Tara had brought 3 cameras with synchronized atomic clocks, all pointed in different directions to cover maximum sky. She set up audio recorders with high-sensitivity microphones that could pick up frequencies both above and below normal human hearing. The EMF detectors were placed in a triangle pattern around our camp, each one calibrated to alert if there were any significant changes in the electromagnetic field. The most impressive piece of equipment was something her university friend had lent her, a magnetometer that could detect minute variations in the Earth's magnetic field. "If there's any kind of advanced technology creating those lights," she explained, "it should show up on this. Conventional aircraft, drones, even experimental military stuff, they all produce detectable magnetic signatures." We also had 6 GPS units from different manufacturers, all recording our exact position with timestamp precision down to the millisecond. If we lost time again, we'd have multiple independent sources documenting it. As the sun set and darkness fell over the desert, we settled in to wait. Tara had brought a portable heater. Those December nights get cold in the high desert. And we sat in folding chairs, watching the sky and monitoring the equipment. "Do you believe in aliens?" I asked her around 9 p.m. She was quiet for a moment. "I believe in things we don't understand yet. Whether those things are extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or just natural phenomena we haven't properly studied, I don't know. But I know what I saw, and I know those 22 seconds are real." The hours passed. We saw satellites tracking across the sky, the occasional airplane far to the north, and once what might have been a meteor. But no orange lights, no strange phenomena. The equipment hummed and beeped softly, recording everything, but nothing unusual appeared on any of the sensors. By midnight, I was starting to think we were wasting our time. Maybe the whole thing had been some kind of freak atmospheric event that would never repeat. Maybe we were chasing something that had no pattern, no logic, no reason. Then, at 12:47 a.m., exactly 3 hours after my original sighting had occurred on October 14th, everything changed. The EMF detectors went off first, all 3 of them simultaneously. Not the gentle warning beep that indicated minor fluctuations, but a sustained, urgent alarm. Tara jumped to her feet, checking the readings. "The electromagnetic field is spiking," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "It's 20 times higher than background levels." I stood up, scanning the sky. Nothing yet, but I could feel it. That same heavy quality to the air, that same sense of anticipation. The temperature gauge on one of our instruments began dropping. 54 degrees. 51. 48. "It's happening," Tara whispered. The light appeared exactly where it had before, out over the river valley. That same orange glow, that same perfect sphere, hanging motionless in the air about 200 feet up. Tara's cameras were recording. The audio equipment was running. The magnetometer was tracking. We were capturing everything. "Look at the magnetometer reading," Tara said, pointing to the display. The numbers were fluctuating wildly, showing massive variations in the local magnetic field. "That's not natural. That's not anything I've ever seen." The light began to drift east, just as it had during my first encounter. But this time we were ready. Tara had a high-powered camera with a telephoto lens, and she was shooting photo after photo, the rapid-fire shutter sounding impossibly loud in the quiet desert night. I watched through the night vision scope she'd brought. Through it, the light looked even stranger. It had this pulsing quality, like it was oscillating at a frequency just below visible perception. And behind it, or maybe inside it, there seemed to be structure, geometric patterns that shifted and changed. "Are you seeing this?" I asked her. "What?" She lowered her camera. "Look through the night vision. There's something inside the light." She grabbed the scope and looked. "Oh my God, there's definitely structure there. It's not just a light source. There's something solid." The light stopped moving, exactly as it had before. It hung in the air, and I felt my heart rate accelerate. This was it. This was the moment when everything would happen again. Tara must have felt it too, because she quickly checked all the GPS units, all the cameras, made sure everything was recording. "Whatever happens," she said, "we've got it documented." The light intensified. That same blinding brightness I'd experienced 2 months ago. I squinted, but forced myself to keep watching. I wasn't going to miss this. I needed to see what happened during those 22 seconds. And I did. I saw it all. The light didn't just get brighter. It seemed to expand, or maybe reality around it contracted. Space looked distorted, like heat shimmer on asphalt, but colder, sharper. And in that distortion, I saw movement. Not the light moving, but something moving within or behind the light. Shapes that didn't quite make sense, that my brain couldn't properly process. Time felt wrong. It didn't slow down or speed up. It felt layered, like I was experiencing multiple moments simultaneously. I could see Tara standing next to me, frozen in mid-gesture. I could see her pressing the button on her camera. I could see her looking at the magnetometer. All at the same time, all happening in the same impossible instant. And then I understood. It wasn't that time was stopping or skipping. It was folding, bending back on itself. Those 22 seconds weren't missing. They were compressed, flattened into a single moment of overlapping time. The light dimmed. Reality snapped back to normal. The distortion vanished, and time felt linear again. I gasped, stumbling backward, and Tara caught my arm. "Did you feel that?" Her voice was shaking. "Yeah. What time is it?" She checked her watch, then her phone, then the GPS units. "It's 12:47 a.m., same time as when it started." I looked at the cameras, at all the equipment still recording. "But we've got it all on video this time. We've got proof." We watched the light for another few minutes, but it was already fading, rising back up and drifting away to the west. Within 5 minutes it was gone, leaving only the normal desert night behind. Tara immediately began downloading the footage from the cameras. I watched over her shoulder as she pulled up the first file, the one from the main camera pointed at the location where the light had appeared. The timestamp showed the light appearing at 12:47:03 a.m. It showed the light drifting, stopping, intensifying. And then, at 12:47:25 a.m., the light vanished. The camera showed us standing there, looking at empty sky. And then the timestamp jumped backward, showing 12:47:03 a.m. again, except now the light was gone, and we were both moving normally. "It recorded it twice," Tara said, her voice filled with wonder. "It captured the same 22 seconds 2 different ways, once with the light, once without." We went through all the cameras. Every single one showed the same thing. 22 seconds recorded twice from 2 different perspectives, as if those seconds had happened in 2 separate realities simultaneously. The audio recordings were even stranger. During those 22 seconds, the microphones had picked up a sound that hadn't been audible to us in real time. It was a deep, resonant frequency, almost below the range of hearing, pulsing in a complex pattern. Tara ran it through audio analysis software, and the pattern showed mathematical precision. It was too regular to be natural. The magnetometer data was the most compelling. During those 22 seconds, the local magnetic field had done something impossible. It had inverted. North became south, south became north, and then inverted back. The sensor had recorded it happening over and over, dozens of times per second, as if the magnetic poles of the Earth were flipping back and forth faster than should be physically possible. "Do you know what this means?" Tara asked, staring at the data. "Time doesn't work the way we think it does, at least not in the presence of whatever that thing is." We stayed there for the rest of the night, reviewing the data, trying to make sense of what we'd captured. By the time the sun came up, we had hundreds of photographs, hours of video, gigabytes of sensor data, all documenting something that shouldn't exist. "What do we do with this?" I asked as we packed up the equipment. Tara was quiet for a long time. "If we release this publicly, what happens? Best case scenario, we're taken seriously and scientists study it. Worst case, we're dismissed as hoaxers or attention seekers. Middle ground, some government agency confiscates the data and we never hear about it again. So, we sit on it? No, we study it ourselves. Figure out what it is, what it means, and then, when we have enough data to be undeniable, we share it." She looked at me. "Are you willing to keep doing this? Keep coming back? Keep documenting?" I thought about those 22 seconds, about the feeling of time folding in on itself, about the structure I'd seen within the light. Yeah, I'm in. Over the next 2 years, Tara and I returned to that spot a dozen times. We documented the light appearing during the spring equinox, the summer solstice, the autumn equinox. Each time, the same pattern, 22 seconds of compressed time, the same magnetic field inversions, the same impossible folding of reality. We weren't the only ones watching anymore. Tara had quietly connected with other researchers, people studying similar phenomena around the world. She shared our data with them through encrypted channels, and they shared theirs with us. A picture was emerging. These events weren't random. They followed patterns, appeared at specific times and locations, and they all involved some kind of temporal distortion. One researcher in Norway, studying the Hessdalen lights, had recorded similar GPS anomalies. Another in Australia had documented magnetic field inversions identical to ours. A physicist in Japan had mathematical models that suggested these events were related to natural wormholes. brief tears in space-time caused by specific alignments of geological and astronomical factors. But here's what we couldn't explain: the structure inside the lights. Every time we photographed them with high-resolution equipment, we saw the same geometric patterns, too precise to be natural, too complex to be simple atmospheric phenomena. Whatever was creating these lights, it had purpose, design, intelligence behind it. I'm writing this in December of 2023, 2 years after that first documented encounter. Tara and I are planning another observation session for the winter solstice. We've upgraded our equipment, better cameras, more sensitive sensors, equipment that can detect gravitational waves and measure quantum fluctuations in the local space. We still don't have all the answers. We don't know what the lights are, where they come from, or what causes the temporal distortions. But we have data. We have documentation. We have proof that something extraordinary is happening in that remote stretch of desert along the Rio Grande. The missing 22 seconds aren't missing anymore. They're compressed, folded, existing in a state that challenges everything we thought we knew about how time works. And somewhere in those folded moments, in that impossible overlap of past and present, there's an answer to a question we haven't quite figured out how to ask yet. My name is Luis Ramirez. I'm a truck driver, not a scientist, but I know what I've seen. I know what I've experienced. And I know that reality is stranger, more complex, and more beautiful than we ever imagined. The lights over the Rio Grande are still there. They're still appearing on their schedule, still creating those 22-second windows into something we don't fully understand. And we'll keep watching, keep recording, keep trying to understand. Because those 22 seconds changed everything. They showed us that time isn't the straight line we thought it was. That reality has layers and folds and dimensions we're only beginning to perceive. That the universe is full of mysteries we haven't even started to solve. And somewhere out there, in the darkness over the desert, those mysteries are waiting for us to figure them out. The missing 22 seconds weren't lost. They were just hidden, waiting for someone to look close enough to find them. We found them, and what we discovered in those compressed moments of time has only raised more questions, deeper mysteries, stranger possibilities. But that's science, isn't it? Every answer reveals new questions. Every mystery solved opens up 10 more. And those lights, those impossible, beautiful, terrifying lights, they're the biggest mystery of all. We'll keep watching, keep documenting, keep trying to understand. Because once you've seen time fold in on itself, once you've experienced reality bending around you, you can't go back to believing the world is simple and straightforward. The lights are real. The data is real. The 22 seconds are real. And whatever is causing them, natural phenomenon, advanced technology, something we don't have words for yet, it's still out there, still happening, still waiting for us to understand. My name is Luis Ramirez, and this is what I know. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy. And some of those things appear as orange lights over the Rio Grande, bending time, challenging our understanding of reality, and leaving us with 22 seconds that exist in 2 places at once. This is my testimony. This is what I've seen, what I've documented, what I've experienced. Make of it what you will. Believe it or dismiss it. But know this: if you ever find yourself on Highway 170 on a clear night near the equinox or solstice, watch the sky. Watch for that orange glow over the river valley. And if you see it, if you experience those 22 seconds of folded time, remember that you're not alone. That others have seen it too. That somewhere someone is documenting it, studying it, trying to understand it. And maybe, someday, we'll figure out what it all means, what those lights are, why they appear, what they're trying to show us. Until then, we watch. We wait, we document. And we wonder at the beautiful, terrifying mystery of those missing 22 seconds. But there's something else I need to tell you. Something that happened 3 months ago that changed everything we thought we understood about the phenomenon. It was March 20th, 2024, the spring equinox. Tara and I were back at our usual spot, equipment set up, waiting for the light to appear. We'd done this so many times by then that it had almost become routine. Almost. Because no matter how many times you witness time folding in on itself, it never becomes normal. The light appeared right on schedule at 9:47 p.m. Same orange glow, same position over the river valley. We started recording, monitoring the sensors, documenting everything just like we always did. But this time, something was different. The light didn't just hover and intensify, it split. One moment, there was a single sphere of orange light, and the next, there were 2, then 3, then 5. They arranged themselves in a perfect pentagon pattern, each one exactly the same distance from the others. And they began to pulse in sequence, like a wave moving around the geometric shape. "Are you seeing this?" Tara's voice was barely above a whisper. "Yeah, this has never happened before." The magnetometer was going wild, showing readings that shouldn't have been possible. The electromagnetic field wasn't just spiking. It was creating a pattern, a specific sequence that repeated every 22 seconds. Tara noticed it first. "The EM field," she said, pointing at the display. "It's not random, it's transmitting information." She pulled out her laptop and started recording the electromagnetic patterns, running them through analysis software. The sequence was complex but structured, mathematical. It reminded me of the audio frequencies we'd recorded before, but this was different. More deliberate, more intentional. The 5 lights began to move. Not randomly, but in a coordinated dance, maintaining their pentagonal formation while rotating around a central point. And in that central point, the air started to shimmer. Reality looked thin there, like you could see through it to something else underneath. Then the 22 seconds hit. But this time it wasn't like before. Instead of time compressing and folding, it felt like it was expanding. Those 22 seconds stretched out, became subjective hours. I was aware of Tara standing next to me, aware of the equipment recording, aware of the cold desert air. But I was also aware of something else. I could see through that shimmer in the center of the pentagon. And what I saw, I don't have adequate words for it. It was like looking at a place that existed outside of normal space, outside of time. I saw structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than 3, geometries that hurt to comprehend. And I saw movement. Not beings exactly, but presences. Intelligences that operated on principles completely foreign to human understanding. One of them noticed me. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. It turned its attention toward me, and in that moment of contact, information flooded into my mind. Not words, not images exactly, but pure understanding. Concepts that I still can't fully articulate. I understood that these lights weren't vehicles or craft. They were doorways, portals between our reality and somewhere else. The 22-second compression wasn't a malfunction or side effect. It was necessary, a buffer zone between 2 different types of time, 2 different ways that causality works. I understood that this had been happening for thousands of years, long before humans had the technology to document it. Ancient people had seen these lights, had experienced these time compressions, and had tried to explain them through the lens of their own understanding. Gods descending from the sky, spirits crossing between worlds, angels appearing in pillars of fire. And I understood something else, something that terrified and excited me in equal measure. These weren't random events. They were scheduled, deliberate. Something on the other side was opening these doorways at specific times for specific reasons, and we, by documenting them, by watching and recording, had been noticed. The 22 seconds ended. Reality snapped back to normal. The 5 lights merged back into one, and then that one light ascended rapidly, vanishing into the night sky within seconds. I collapsed to my knees, gasping for air. Tara was on the ground, too, tears streaming down her face. "Did you?" she started to ask. "Yeah," I managed to say. "I saw it. I felt it." We didn't talk much for the rest of that night. We packed up the equipment in silence, both of us processing what we'd experienced. It was only when we were back in El Paso, sitting in that same diner where we'd first met, that we were able to discuss it. "They know we're watching," Tara said, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup that had gone cold. "Whatever they are, wherever they are, they're aware that we've been documenting them. Is that good or bad? I don't know, but I think," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "I think they've been waiting for us to reach a certain level of understanding before revealing more. Like they needed us to document the basic pattern first, to understand the time compression, before they could show us the next layer." Over the next few weeks, Tara analyzed the electromagnetic patterns we'd recorded. She found something remarkable. The sequence contained mathematical constants. Pi, the golden ratio, Planck's constant. It was like a greeting card, a way of saying, "We understand your mathematics. We speak your language of numbers." But more than that, the pattern contained coordinates. Not spatial coordinates, but temporal ones. Dates and times translated into a mathematical format. Future dates when the doorways would open. And one of those dates was circled, emphasized, made more prominent than the others. December 21st, 2024. The upcoming winter solstice. 9 months from now. "I think they're inviting us," Tara said, showing me the decoded pattern. "This date, this time, I think something different is going to happen. Something bigger than what we've seen before. I've thought a lot about what that might mean. Are we being invited to witness something? To participate in something? Or are we being warned? I don't know. But I do know that we're going to be there, equipment ready, documenting everything. Because here's what I've come to understand over these past 3 years of chasing lights in the desert. We're living in a universe far stranger than we ever imagined. The boundaries between different realities are thinner than we thought. Time doesn't work the way our physics textbooks say it does. And somewhere out there, beyond the veil of our everyday experience, there are intelligences that operate on principles we're only beginning to glimpse. Those 22 seconds, they're not just missing time. They're bridges. Connections between here and there, between now and somewhere else, and by documenting them, by studying them, by trying to understand them, we've opened a dialogue that's been waiting for centuries to begin. I still drive my truck routes. I still make deliveries. But now, every time I pass through that stretch of Highway 170, I look up at the sky and wonder what's happening in those other layers of reality. Wonder what those intelligences are doing, why they're opening these doorways, what they want us to understand. Tara has given up her day job. She got a grant, she won't tell me from where, says it's better I don't know, to study temporal anomalies full-time. She's connected with researchers around the world now, building a network of people who are documenting similar phenomena. Norway, Australia, Japan, Peru, there are doorways opening all over the planet, all of them following patterns, all of them creating those same temporal compressions, and all of them, according to the decoded patterns, building toward that date in December. I think about the future a lot these days. Not just my personal future, but humanity's future. What happens when everyone knows that these doorways exist? When it becomes undeniable that reality is more complex than we thought? When we have to confront the fact that we're not alone, not isolated, not the only intelligence operating in this corner of the universe? Some days, that thought excites me. Other days, it terrifies me. But mostly, it fills me with this strange sense of anticipation. Like we're standing on the edge of something monumental. Something that will change everything we think we know about our place in the cosmos. The missing 22 seconds were never really missing. They were always there, just compressed, folded, existing in a state we didn't have the tools to perceive. But now we do. Now we can see them, measure them, study them. And through them we can see glimpses of something vast and ancient and utterly transformative. My name is Luis Ramirez. I'm a truck driver who saw an orange light over the Rio Grande and lost 22 seconds of time. And in finding those seconds again, I found something I never expected to find. Proof that the universe is alive with mysteries, that reality is far stranger than fiction, and that we're part of a story much larger than ourselves. The lights are still there. The doorways are still opening. And in 9 months on the winter solstice, something is going to happen. Something that will either answer our questions or raise 100 more. We'll be there to document it, to witness it, to try to understand it, and maybe, just maybe, to step through. My name is Mateo Sanchez, and I'm a Border Patrol agent stationed out of the Presidio sector in West Texas. I've been doing this job for 11 years now, and in that time, I've seen a lot of strange things. Smugglers using drones to scout our positions. Migrants crossing in places that seemed impossible to traverse. Wildlife acting in ways that defied explanation. But what happened on the night of August 3rd, 2022, on Ranch Road 28 and 10 south of Redford, that was something else entirely. Something I still can't explain, no matter how many times I go over it in my head. I need to start by telling you about my partner that night, Joel Gutierrez. Joel was younger than me, only been with the patrol for 3 years, but he was solid, reliable. Not the type to panic or see things that weren't there. We'd worked together for 18 months, and I trusted him. That trust is important for what comes next, because what we experienced that night, we experienced together. I'm not some lone witness with a wild story. There were 2 of us, and what we saw, we both saw. The night started normally enough. We were running a routine patrol along the river roads, checking for signs of recent crossings. It was late summer, and even at 10 p.m., the temperature was still hovering around 90 degrees. The kind of heat that makes the air shimmer even in darkness, that makes you feel like you're breathing through a wet towel. Joel was driving our Ford F-250, standard-issue patrol vehicle. I was in the passenger seat, scanning the landscape with night vision binoculars, looking for movement, for anything out of place. The radio crackled occasionally with chatter from other units, but our sector was quiet, had been quiet for hours. We were about 12 miles south of Redford, on a dirt road that paralleled the Rio Grande about a quarter mile to the east. It's remote out there. No houses, no lights, just empty desert stretching in every direction. The nearest town of any size is Presidio, 30 miles north. On a clear night like that one, you could see stars like you were looking through a telescope. The Milky Way was a bright smear across the sky, and you could make out individual satellites tracking across the darkness. You ever think about how small we are? Joel asked, breaking the silence. He had a habit of doing that, philosophical questions out of nowhere. I mean, look at all those stars, billions of them, and we're just here driving around in the desert looking for people trying to cross an imaginary line. Deep thoughts for a Wednesday night, I said. I'm serious. You ever wonder if there's someone else out there, looking up at their sky, having the same thought? Before I could answer, our radio started acting weird. Instead of the usual static or clear voices, it began emitting this pulsing tone. Not like interference from another station, but a rhythmic pulse. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, over and over. What the hell is that? Joel reached for the radio to adjust it. Leave it, I said. I want to hear if it changes. We listened to that pulsing for maybe 30 seconds. It didn't change, didn't vary, just that same pattern, mechanical and precise. Then it stopped abruptly, replaced by normal static. Equipment malfunction? Joel suggested. Maybe, but I didn't believe it. I'd been using these radios for 11 years and I'd never heard anything like that. That's when we both noticed the temperature. The dashboard gauge showed it had dropped 15 degrees in the last few minutes, from 90 to 75, in the desert in August at night. The air coming through the vents was suddenly cold enough that I could see my breath. Joel slowed the truck. You feel that? Yeah, something's not right. He brought the vehicle to a stop in the middle of the road. There was no reason to pull over. We hadn't seen another vehicle on this road in hours. We sat there, engine idling, watching the temperature gauge continue to drop. 72, 69, 65. Should we call it in? Joel asked. I was about to say yes when I saw the light. It appeared in the southern sky, maybe 30 degrees above the horizon. At first, I thought it was a helicopter or a plane, but it was too bright and the wrong color. It was white, intensely white, like a welding arc or a magnesium flare. And it wasn't moving the way aircraft move. There was no arc to its trajectory, no sense of it traveling from point A to point B. It was just there, stationary, hanging in the sky above the river valley. You seeing that? I asked Joel. Yeah. What is it? I raised my binoculars and focused on the light. Through the lenses I could see it more clearly. It was spherical, perfectly round, and the brightness seemed to come from within it rather than being reflected from an external source. There was no structure visible, no fuselage or rotors or wings, just that brilliant white sphere. Could be a flare, Joel said, but he didn't sound convinced. Flares fall. That thing's not falling. We watched it for maybe 2 minutes. It didn't move, didn't change, just hung there in the sky. Then, without warning, something happened that made my blood run cold. The light split. Not like it broke apart or exploded. It split cleanly, precisely, like someone had sliced it with a knife. One moment, there was a single sphere of light, and the next there were 2, both identical in size and brightness. They separated slowly, drifting apart until there was maybe 100 feet between them. Did you just see that? Joel's voice was tight. Yeah. We sat there, frozen, watching those 2 lights. And then it happened again. Each of the 2 lights split, creating 4. The 4 arranged themselves in a perfect square pattern, each one equidistant from the others. Mateo, what the hell is going on? I didn't answer because I didn't have an answer. In 11 years of working these desert nights, I'd never seen anything like this. The lights were too precise, too deliberate. This wasn't ball lightning or atmospheric phenomena or any natural explanation I could think of. The 4 lights began to pulse, not randomly but in sequence, like a wave moving around the square. Light 1 would brighten, then dim, then light 2, then 3, then 4, over and over, creating a rotating pattern that was almost hypnotic to watch. and then the truck died. The engine just stopped. No sputtering, no warning, just complete silence. The dashboard lights went out. The radio went dead. Even my watch, a digital one I'd worn for years, went blank. The display completely dark. "Joel, start the engine." He turned the key. Nothing happened. No click from the starter. No sound at all. The truck was completely dead, and we were sitting in absolute darkness except for those 4 pulsing lights in the sky. "This is wrong," Joel said, and I could hear the fear in his voice. "This is really wrong." I tried my radio, the handheld one on my belt. Dead. I pulled out my phone. It was off, wouldn't turn on even when I held down the power button. Every electronic device we had was completely inoperative. The lights changed their pattern. Instead of pulsing in sequence, they began to pulse simultaneously, all 4 brightening and dimming together. And each time they pulsed, I felt something. Not a sound exactly, but a pressure. Like a wave of force washing over us, pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. "We need to get out of here," Joel said, reaching for the door handle. "Wait." I grabbed his arm. "We don't know what's happening. Stay in the truck." But even as I said it, I knew the truck wasn't protection against anything. If those lights, whatever they were, wanted to harm us, being inside a dead vehicle wasn't going to help. The 4 lights began to move, not randomly, but in a coordinated pattern, maintaining their square formation while descending toward the desert floor. They were coming down slowly, deliberately, and they were heading in our direction. I could see them more clearly now as they got closer. Each one was about 3 feet in diameter, and the light they emitted was cold, no heat radiating from them despite their brightness. They descended to about 50 feet above the ground and stopped, hovering in formation about 200 yards from our position. The pulsing stopped. All 4 lights became steady, constant, and in that steady illumination I could see the landscape around us in eerie detail. The scrub brush, the rocky soil, the dry creek bed to our left. Everything was washed in that cold white light, looking unreal, like a black and white photograph. Then the lights began to merge. The 4 spheres drifted toward each other, moving slowly but inexorably. They came together in the center of their formation, and when they touched, there was a flash, brief but intense, that made me close my eyes reflexively. When I opened them again, there was only one light, a single sphere but larger now, maybe 12 feet across. It hung there in the air, and I had the overwhelming sense that it was aware of us, that it knew we were watching. "Mateo," Joel whispered, "look at your watch." I looked down. My watch had come back on, the display showing the time, 10:47 p.m., but that couldn't be right. We'd stopped the truck around 10:30, watched the lights for what felt like maybe 10 minutes. It should have been 10:40 at most. "How long were we sitting here?" I asked. "I don't know. It felt like a few minutes, but..." Joel checked his own phone, which had apparently come back to life. "My phone says 10:47 too. 17 minutes. We'd lost 17 minutes somehow, or we'd been sitting there longer than it felt like, and our perception of time had been distorted. Either way, something was very wrong. The large sphere began to ascend. It rose slowly, climbing back up into the night sky, and as it climbed, the temperature began to return to normal. I could feel the warm desert air seeping back in through the vents, see the condensation on the windshield starting to evaporate. When the light was about 200 feet up, it split again. But this time, it didn't split into 2 or 4 lights. It divided into 3. 3 identical spheres that arranged themselves in a triangle pattern. They hung there for maybe 5 seconds, and then they shot away. Not in the same direction, but in 3 different directions. north, east, and west. They accelerated so fast that they were gone from sight in less than a second, leaving only normal darkness behind. The truck's engine turned over. Joel hadn't touched the key, but the engine started on its own, the dashboard lights coming back on, the radio crackling to life with normal chatter from other units. We sat there in stunned silence for a long moment. Finally, Joel spoke. "What just happened?" "I don't know. Should we report this?" That was the question, wasn't it? Report what? That we'd seen mysterious lights that split and merged and made our vehicle die? That we'd lost 17 minutes that felt like 5? Who would believe us? And more importantly, what would happen to our careers if we filed a report like that? "Let's think about it," I said. "Let's get back to the station, write down everything we remember while it's fresh, and then decide." Joel nodded and put the truck in drive. We continued our patrol, both of us quiet, both of us processing what we'd experienced. But about a mile down the road, we found something that made everything more complicated. There were marks on the ground. 3 circular impressions in the desert soil, each about 12 feet across, arranged in a perfect triangle pattern. The vegetation inside each circle was flattened, pushed down in a spiral pattern that radiated from the center. And the soil itself looked different. It had a glassy quality, like it had been subjected to intense heat. We stopped the truck and got out to examine the marks more closely. I pulled out my flashlight, which was working normally now, and studied the impressions. They were too perfect, too geometric to be natural. The centers of each circle were pressed down about 6 inches into the hardpan, and the spiral pattern in the flattened vegetation was precise, mathematical. Joel took photographs with his phone, making sure to get shots from multiple angles. "This is where they landed, isn't it? Those lights." I didn't want to say it out loud, didn't want to commit to that interpretation. But what else could it be? 3 circles arranged in the same triangular pattern as the 3 lights we'd seen split apart and fly away. The evidence was right there in front of us. I walked to the center of one of the impressions and knelt down. The soil was warm, not hot, but warmer than the surrounding ground should be in the cool night air. And there was a smell, faint but distinct, like ozone, like the air after a lightning strike. "We have to report this," Joel said. "This is physical evidence. This isn't just us seeing things. This is real." He was right. Whatever we'd witnessed, it had left marks. Tangible, measurable marks that couldn't be explained away as misidentification or hallucination. But I was still hesitant. I'd been with the Border Patrol long enough to know how these things worked. We'd file a report, and then what? Either we'd be taken seriously, which meant our lives becoming a circus of investigations and interviews and speculation, or we'd be dismissed as unreliable, which could end our careers. "Let's document everything first," I said. "Measurements, photos, soil samples. Then we'll decide how to proceed." We spent the next hour measuring and photographing the site. Each circle was exactly 12 feet in diameter. The triangle they formed was equilateral, with each circle's center exactly 73 feet from the other 2. The precision was unnerving. The spiral patterns in the flattened vegetation all rotated clockwise, and each completed exactly 3 full rotations from the outer edge to the center. I collected soil samples from the center of each circle, using evidence bags from our truck. The soil had that glassy quality I'd noticed earlier. It looked almost like it had been partially melted and then cooled. I wasn't a scientist, but I'd never seen anything like it. By the time we finished documenting the site, it was after midnight. We'd been out here for hours, and we still had half our patrol route to complete. But neither of us wanted to continue. We wanted to get back to the station, to fluorescent lights and other people and the normalcy of bureaucracy. We drove back in silence, both of us lost in our thoughts. I kept replaying what we'd seen, trying to find some conventional explanation. But there wasn't one. The lights had behaved in ways that defied physics as I understood it. They'd split and merged, hovered without visible means of propulsion, caused all our electronics to fail simultaneously, and then apparently landed and left physical evidence of their presence. When we got back to the Presidio station around 1 a.m., I made a decision. We're going to write this up as an equipment malfunction and unusual atmospheric phenomena. We saw strange lights, probably some kind of electrical storm phenomenon. Our equipment failed due to electromagnetic interference. That's our official report. Joel looked at me. And the landing site? We'll keep that between us for now. We've got the documentation, the photos, the samples. But let's not make this official until we understand it better. He didn't like it. I could see that in his face, but he understood the reasoning. What about those 17 missing minutes? We don't mention those. As far as anyone else knows, our truck stalled, we saw some weird lights, and then everything went back to normal. We filed our reports separately, keeping them vague and technical. Equipment failure, possible atmospheric electrical discharge, no explanation for the cause. It was enough to be documented without being so strange that it would raise red flags, but over the next few days I couldn't stop thinking about what we'd seen. I started doing research, going through old Border Patrol reports, looking for similar incidents. And I found them. Not many, but enough to establish a pattern. In June of 2019, 2 agents working the sector near Candelaria reported seeing multiple lights maneuvering in formation and experiencing vehicle electrical failure. Their report was filed and apparently forgotten. In October of 2017, an agent working solo near Ruidosa reported a bright aerial light that divided into multiple sources before disappearing. He noted that his radio had stopped working for approximately 15 minutes during the sighting. In March of 2015, a pair of agents near Redford, not far from where Joel and I had our experience, reported seeing 3 lights in triangular formation that descended toward the ground and then ascended rapidly. They didn't mention any missing time or vehicle malfunction, but they did note that the incident occurred at 10:47 p.m. The same time our vehicle had come back to life, the same time that seemed to be stamped into my memory of that night. I copied all these reports and kept them in a folder at home. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I felt like I needed to document this, to understand if there was a larger pattern. 2 weeks after our sighting, I got a call from Joel. He sounded agitated. "Mateo, I need to talk to you, in person. Can you meet me?" We met at a coffee shop in Presidio. Joel looked like he hadn't been sleeping well, dark circles under his eyes, a nervous energy in his movements. "I went back," he said, as soon as I sat down, "to the site last night." "Why would you do that?" "Because I couldn't stop thinking about it. I needed to see if the marks were still there, if I'd really seen what I thought I saw." He pulled out his phone and showed me photos. The 3 circular impressions were still visible, though less distinct than they'd been. Wind and time had softened them, but the basic pattern was still clear. "Okay," I said. "The marks are real. We knew that. That's not all." Joel lowered his voice. "While I was there, examining the site, I heard something. A humming sound, really low frequency. It was coming from the ground, from the center of the circles." "Underground?" "I don't know, but I could feel it as much as hear it. It made my teeth ache. And then..." He paused, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "The lights came back." I felt my chest tighten. "The same lights?" "Not exactly, just one light this time, small, about the size of a basketball. It appeared about 50 feet up and drifted around the site like it was examining the area. It pulsed the same way the big ones did, and then it descended into one of the circles and vanished, just disappeared into the ground. Did your equipment fail? Did you lose time? No, everything kept working. But Mateo, I'm telling you, there's something there. Something under the ground, or connected to that spot somehow. This wasn't a one-time thing. Whatever left those marks, it came back. I sat back, trying to process this. If Joel was telling the truth, and I had no reason to think he wasn't, then this was an ongoing phenomenon, not a random occurrence, but something repeating, something with pattern and purpose. We need to set up monitoring equipment, I said. Cameras, sensors, something that can record what's happening when we're not there. With what budget? You think the Border Patrol is going to fund a UFO investigation? He was right. We'd have to do this ourselves, on our own time, with our own resources, and we'd have to be careful not to let anyone know what we were doing. Over the next month, Joel and I pooled our money and bought equipment. Trail cameras, the kind hunters use. A seismograph we found on eBay that could detect underground vibrations. A magnetometer borrowed from a friend who worked in geological surveys. We set it all up around the site, disguised as much as possible, and waited. The cameras captured nothing unusual for the first 2 weeks. Coyotes passing through, the occasional rabbit, the slow movement of stars across the night sky. The seismograph showed normal background noise, the subtle tremors that the Earth generates constantly, minor fluctuations that meant nothing. But on the 15th night, everything changed. The seismograph recorded a spike in underground activity at 10:47 p.m. Not an earthquake. The pattern was wrong for that. It was more like a pulse, a rhythmic vibration that lasted for exactly 17 minutes. During those 17 minutes, the magnetometer showed massive fluctuations in the local magnetic field, swings of hundreds of milliteslas, far beyond what should be naturally possible. And the cameras captured the lights. They appeared at 10:47 p.m. right on schedule. One light at first, descending from the sky. At 50 feet altitude, it split into 3. The 3 lights descended further, reaching about 10 feet off the ground, and then they began to pulse in that same pattern we'd witnessed. The video quality wasn't great. These were budget trail cameras, not high-end video equipment, but it was clear enough. Clear enough to show the lights merging back into one. Clear enough to show that single light descending into the center of one of the circles and vanishing. The timestamp on the video showed the light disappearing at 11:04 p.m., 17 minutes after it had appeared. Joel and I watched that footage dozens of times. We analyzed every frame, looking for any sign of trickery, any explanation that didn't involve something impossible happening. But there was nothing. The lights were real, the pattern was real, and somehow they were going underground. "What do we do with this?" Joel asked. I'd been thinking about that question for weeks. We had documentation now, video evidence, sensor readings, precise measurements. We could go public, release this information, let the world see what was happening in this remote corner of the Texas desert. But I'd also been thinking about what that would mean, the attention it would bring, the scrutiny, the possibility that we'd be dismissed as hoaxers or attention seekers, the certainty that our careers with the Border Patrol would be over. "I think we keep documenting," I said finally. "We gather more evidence, establish a stronger pattern, and then we find the right people to share it with. Scientists who study this kind of thing, researchers who won't dismiss it out of hand. How long do we wait? Until we understand what we're dealing with." That was 2 years ago. Joel and I have been monitoring the site ever since, taking turns checking the equipment, downloading footage, analyzing the data, the lights continue to appear, following a pattern we've finally decoded. They come every 28 days, always at 10:47 p.m., always lasting for 17 minutes. The cycle never varies. It's precise, mechanical, utterly predictable. During those 17 minutes, the local magnetic field goes haywire. Underground vibrations spike, and the lights perform their ritual, appearing, splitting into 3, pulsing, merging, and descending. We've documented 32 separate occurrences. We have over 50 hours of video footage. We have hundreds of sensor readings, all showing the same pattern. The evidence is overwhelming, undeniable, and we still don't know what it means. But we've learned some things. The 28-day cycle corresponds to the lunar cycle, though not to any particular phase. The lights always appear when the moon is at a specific angle in the sky relative to our position. We've mapped it out, and the precision is astonishing. The underground vibrations follow a specific frequency pattern, a sequence of pulses that repeats every 42 seconds during the 17-minute window. Joel ran the pattern through audio analysis software, and it contains mathematical ratios. The golden ratio appears multiple times. So does pi. It's too structured, too precise to be random. And the landing sites, those 3 circles that we first documented, they've changed. The soil in those spots has become increasingly glassy, crystalline. Joel collected samples and sent them to a geology lab, claiming they were from a potential mining site he was evaluating. The analysis came back with results that made no sense. The soil had been subjected to temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, but the surrounding area showed no evidence of fire or heat damage. The crystallization pattern suggested rapid heating and cooling, but the crystals themselves were aligned in a way that doesn't occur naturally. 6 months ago, we expanded our monitoring area. We set up equipment at other locations where historical reports had mentioned similar lights. Near Candelaria, near Ruidosa, near Lajitas. And we found the same pattern. Lights appearing every 28 days, at different times but always following the same 17-minute duration. Always splitting into 3, always descending into the ground. Whatever this phenomenon is, it's not isolated to one location. It's happening across the entire border region, possibly beyond. And it's been happening for a long time. Those historical reports go back to the 1950s, and I found newspaper accounts from the 1930s describing similar lights. Joel wants to go public. He's compiled everything into a comprehensive report: video, sensor data, analysis, historical context. He's found researchers at universities who study anomalous phenomena, people who might take us seriously. He's ready to share what we've found with the world. But I'm hesitant, because 3 months ago something else happened. Something that makes me think we're being watched. I was at the primary site downloading footage from the trail cameras when I noticed something odd. One of the cameras had been moved. Not by much, just a few degrees of rotation, but enough that I could tell someone had touched it. And when I reviewed the footage from that camera, there was a gap. 6 hours of recording, missing. Not corrupted, not overwritten, just gone, as if someone had carefully edited them out. I checked the other cameras. Same thing. 6-hour gaps, all during the same time period, all edited with precision that suggested someone knew exactly what they were doing. Someone else knows about this site. Someone else is monitoring it. And they have the ability to access our equipment without leaving any other trace. I haven't told Joel yet. I don't know how to explain it without sounding paranoid. But I've been more careful since then, varied my schedule for checking the equipment, looked for signs of surveillance. And I've noticed things. A car that seems to show up in Presidio whenever I'm in town. a helicopter that flies over the site more frequently than border patrol patterns would explain. Small things that might mean nothing, or might mean everything. Last week, I made copies of all our data, multiple copies stored in different locations. If something happens to the original equipment, if our documentation disappears, there will be backups. Because I think we've stumbled onto something significant, something that someone doesn't want known. The lights are still appearing, still following their pattern. Every 28 days, 10:47 p.m., 17 minutes of impossible phenomena. Joel and I will be there to document it, to try to understand it. But now I wonder if understanding is even possible. If what we're seeing is so far beyond our current science that we're like children trying to understand calculus. What are the lights? I don't know. They behave with intelligence, with purpose, but they don't fit any model of known technology. They interact with the Earth's magnetic field in ways that suggest either incredibly advanced science or entirely different physics. They descend underground, suggesting either they're entering some kind of subsurface installation or they're capable of phasing through solid matter. Why do they appear on a precise schedule? That suggests either they're monitoring something, conducting some kind of survey, or they're following some natural pattern we don't understand yet. The correlation with lunar cycles implies they're either using the moon's gravitational influence for some purpose, or the moon's position is just a convenient timekeeper for whatever intelligence controls them. And why here? Why this stretch of desert along the Rio Grande? Is there something geologically unique about this region? Something about the river, the rock formations, the magnetic field? Or is it simply remote enough that the lights can appear without drawing unwanted attention? These are the questions that keep me awake at night. These are the mysteries that have consumed the last 2 years of my life. I'm writing this account because I think it's important that someone knows. If anything happens to Joel or me, if our data disappears, if this phenomenon suddenly stops, there should be a record. Someone should know that this was real, that we documented it, that we tried to understand it. My name is Mateo Sanchez. I'm a Border Patrol agent, not a scientist. But I know what I've seen. I know what I've measured and documented. And I know that there's something happening in the night skies over West Texas that challenges everything we think we know about what's possible. The lights are still splitting. 3 perfect spheres, appearing like clockwork, descending into the desert floor. We're still watching, still recording, still trying to understand. And somewhere out there, someone or something is watching us watch them. The next appearance is scheduled for tomorrow night. 10:47 p.m., 17 minutes of impossible phenomena. Joel and I will be there with our cameras and sensors, documenting everything, adding to our growing archive of evidence that something extraordinary is happening in one of the most remote corners of America. Maybe someday we'll understand what it means. Maybe someday science will advance enough to explain what we've seen. Or maybe this will remain a mystery, an unexplained pattern of lights in the desert night, witnessed by 2 Border Patrol agents who decided to document rather than ignore. But I'll tell you this, the lights are real, the pattern is real, and whatever they represent, natural phenomenon, advanced technology, something we don't have words for yet, they're out there, appearing with mechanical precision, splitting into 3 and descending into the earth beneath the desert. Every 28 days, every 17 minutes, always at 10:47 p.m. The splitting light continues its pattern, indifferent to our attempts to understand it. And we continue to watch, to document, to wonder. Because once you've seen something that shouldn't be possible, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to believing the world is simple and explainable. The desert keeps its secrets. The lights keep their schedule. And somewhere between what we know and what we've witnessed, There's a truth waiting to be discovered. We're still looking for it. But there's more to this story. Things I haven't told Joel yet. Things I've been keeping to myself because I'm not sure what they mean, or if I'm just becoming paranoid from spending too much time chasing mysteries in the desert. 3 weeks ago, I was at home in my apartment in Presidio, going through our data files on my laptop. It was late, past midnight, and I was trying to find correlations between the lunar cycles and the intensity of the magnetic field readings. That's when I noticed something in the background of one of our videos. The footage was from a night about 6 months back, one of the routine appearances of the lights. We'd documented the usual pattern, the single light splitting into 3, the 17-minute cycle, the descent into the ground. But I'd been reviewing the footage frame by frame, looking for details we might have missed when I saw it. In the far background, barely visible in the darkness beyond our illuminated monitoring area, there was another light. Not one of the 3 spheres we'd been tracking, but something else. Something stationary on the ground, about half a mile from our position. It was dim, easily overlooked if you weren't looking for it, and it appeared in only 6 frames of the video before disappearing. I enhanced the image as much as I could. The light appeared to be coming from a vehicle. The shape suggested a truck or SUV, though the resolution was too poor to be certain. And it was positioned in a spot that gave a clear view of our monitoring site. Someone had been watching us watch the lights. I went back through months of footage, looking for that same background anomaly. I found it in 7 other videos, always in different positions, but always at a distance that suggested observation rather than coincidence. Someone had been monitoring our site for at least 6 months, probably longer. The question was, who? Border Patrol? Military? Some other government agency? Or was it civilians, other researchers who'd noticed the same patterns we had? I decided to find out. Last week, I went to the site on a night when the lights weren't scheduled to appear. I brought a high-powered spotlight and hiking gear, and I walked out to the approximate location where I'd seen that background light in the footage. It took me an hour of searching in the darkness, but I found tire tracks. Recent ones, less than a week old based on how defined they were in the dry soil. They led to a small rise that overlooked our monitoring area. Someone had parked there, probably with a clear view of our cameras and equipment. And that's where I found the first piece of real evidence that we weren't alone in this investigation. There was a cigarette butt on the ground. Just one, but it was fresh. The paper hadn't degraded yet from sun exposure. I picked it up carefully, using a tissue to avoid contaminating it with my fingerprints. It was a Marlboro Red, smoked down to the filter. Not much, but it was something. Someone had stood in this exact spot recently, smoking and watching. I searched the immediate area more carefully, and that's when I found the equipment. It was buried in the sand, camouflaged carefully but not quite well enough. A small black box, about the size of a paperback book, with a tiny antenna protruding from one end. I didn't touch it. I'm not stupid enough to tamper with unknown electronics. But I photographed it from every angle and noted its exact GPS coordinates. The device was pointed directly at our primary monitoring station. Whatever it was either recording our activity or transmitting data about it to someone else. Maybe both. I left everything exactly as I'd found it and hiked back to my truck. The whole way, I felt exposed, watched, like there were eyes on me from the darkness, tracking my movements. It's a feeling I've had before during border patrol operations, the sense that you're not alone in the desert even when you can't see anyone. But this was different. This felt more focused, more intentional. When I got home, I researched the device I'd photographed. Based on the design and the antenna configuration, it appeared to be a wireless transmission unit. Probably solar-powered given the small panel I'd noticed on top. These are used for remote monitoring, weather stations, wildlife cameras, that sort of thing. But they can also be used for surveillance. Someone was definitely watching us, and they had been for months. I knew I had to tell Joel, but I wanted more information first. I needed to know who was behind the surveillance before we decided how to respond. So I did something I'm not particularly proud of. I used my Border Patrol access to run some inquiries. I checked to see if there were any official investigations or monitoring operations in our sector that I wasn't aware of. Nothing. No Border Patrol surveillance, no DEA operations, no FBI task forces. Whatever was going on, it wasn't official government activity. At least not official activity that showed up in standard databases. Then I started looking into less official channels. I have a friend, Marcus, who works in the El Paso Intelligence Fusion Center. We went through the academy together, and he owes me a favor from a few years back. I called him and asked, very carefully, if there had been any unusual activity reports from the Presidio sector recently. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Mateo, why are you asking?" "Just curious. I've been working that sector for years and I like to know what's going on." Another pause. "There have been some inquiries from outside agencies. Nothing official that I can share with you. But if you're asking because you've noticed something unusual, my advice would be to file reports through proper channels and let it go." What kind of outside agencies? The kind that don't share information with local fusion centers. The kind that make people nervous. Mateo, seriously. If you've stumbled onto something, be very careful how you proceed. I thanked him and hung up. Marcus had essentially confirmed my suspicions. Someone with significant resources and authority was interested in what was happening in the desert, and they'd noticed that Joel and I were investigating it. That night, I made another set of backup copies of all our data. I stored them in 3 different locations, one in a safe deposit box, one with my sister in Austin, and one uploaded to an encrypted cloud server. If someone wanted to suppress what we'd found, they'd have to work a lot harder than just confiscating our equipment. The next day, I finally told Joel everything. We met at our usual spot, that same coffee shop in Presidio, and I laid it all out. The background lights in the footage, the tire tracks, the surveillance equipment, my conversation with Marcus. All of it. Joel listened quietly, his face growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, he sat back and stared at his coffee cup for a long moment. "We need to go public," he said finally. "Right now. Before whoever's watching us decides to shut us down." "And say what? We've been monitoring mysterious lights that we can't explain. We'll be dismissed as cranks, and then we'll have no credibility if we try to share the actual evidence. So, what do you suggest?" I'd been thinking about this for days. We need to connect with other researchers, people who've documented similar phenomena. Build a network, share data, establish that this isn't just happening here. Then, when we do go public, it's not just 2 Border Patrol agents with a wild story. It's a coordinated presentation of data from multiple sources. Joel nodded slowly. "How do we find these other researchers?" "I've already started. There's a professor at UT Austin who studies atmospheric phenomena. I sent him an email, very vague, just asking about unexplained lights in remote areas. He responded within an hour, said he'd love to discuss it. There's also a retired Air Force officer who's written about similar incidents near military installations. And a journalist in New Mexico who's been investigating border region mysteries for years. When do we meet with them?" "The professor can meet next week. The Air Force officer is in Albuquerque. I was thinking we could drive up there on our next days off. The journalist wants to talk over secure channels first, make sure we're legitimate." Over the next month, Joel and I carefully built our network. We met with Professor Richard Mendoza at UT Austin, who showed us his own documentation of unexplained aerial phenomena across West Texas. His data went back 15 years, and it showed patterns we'd never noticed. The 28-day cycle we documented wasn't the only pattern. There was also a yearly cycle, with peaks of activity during equinoxes and solstices. The retired Air Force officer, Colonel David Hayes, had even more compelling information. He'd been stationed at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico during the 1990s, and he'd witnessed similar lights during night operations. He'd filed official reports, and those reports had been classified. He didn't have copies, they'd been confiscated when he retired, but he remembered the details clearly. Multiple lights splitting and merging, precise geometric patterns, electromagnetic effects on aircraft systems. "What do you think they are?" I asked him during our meeting. Colonel Hayes was silent for a moment, looking out the window of the Albuquerque diner where we'd met. "Honestly, I don't know. I've spent 30 years trying to figure it out. They don't behave like any aircraft I've ever seen. They don't leave heat signatures. They seem to manipulate electromagnetic fields in ways that shouldn't be possible with current technology. If they're man-made, they're using physics we don't understand yet. If they're not man-made..." He trailed off, leaving that thought unfinished. The journalist, a woman named Sarah Delgado, was the most cautious of our contacts. She'd been investigating strange phenomena along the border for a decade, and she'd learned to be careful. She'd had equipment confiscated, been followed, even received veiled threats to stop asking questions. But she had sources we didn't have access to, government sources, people inside agencies who were willing to talk off the record. And what they told her was disturbing. "There's a program," she explained during our first secure video call. "I don't know its official name, or even if it has one. But there are people, well-funded, well-connected people, who monitor these phenomena very carefully. They don't try to stop them or interfere with them. They just watch, document, and keep the information classified." "Why?" Joel asked. "That's the question I've been trying to answer for 10 years. My sources suggest it's because they don't understand what's happening either. These lights, these patterns, they've been occurring for decades, maybe centuries, and no one has figured out what they are or where they come from. So instead of admitting that publicly, they keep it quiet and keep studying it." "What about the surveillance on us?" I asked. "The equipment I found?" Sarah's expression grew more serious. "That's them. They know you've been monitoring the phenomena. They probably know about everyone who's researching it. They're not going to interfere directly. That would confirm that there's something worth investigating. But they're watching. And if you get too close to understanding what's really happening, or if you try to go too public with your findings, they'll find ways to discredit you or shut you down." We talked for another hour, sharing information and strategies. Sarah agreed to help us compile our data into a format that could be shared with credible researchers and media outlets. Professor Mendoza offered to write up a scientific analysis of our findings, lending academic credibility to what we'd documented. Colonel Hayes said he'd use his military contacts to try to find others who'd witnessed similar phenomena. We were building something, a coalition of people who'd seen the unexplained and refused to let it be forgotten or dismissed. It felt important, like we were on the edge of revealing something significant. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that someone was tracking our movements, our communications, our meetings. I started varying my routines, checking for surveillance, being careful about what I said on the phone or in emails. And then, 2 weeks ago, something happened that confirmed all my paranoid suspicions. I came home to find my apartment had been searched. Nothing obvious. My TV was still there, my laptop, my wallet. But small things were different. Books on my shelf were in slightly different positions. My desk drawer wasn't quite closed all the way. The folder where I kept printed copies of our data was exactly where I'd left it, but the papers inside were in a different order than I'd organized them. Someone had been through my apartment, carefully and professionally. They'd looked at everything, photographed it all probably, and then put it back almost exactly as they'd found it. Almost, but not quite. The kind of small discrepancies that you'd only notice if you were looking for them. I immediately checked my laptop. No signs of tampering, but that didn't mean much. If someone had the skills to search my apartment that carefully, they had the skills to access my computer without leaving obvious traces. All the really important data was backed up in multiple locations, so even if they'd copied everything on my laptop, they didn't have the full picture. But they had enough. They knew what we'd been doing, who we'd been talking to, what we'd discovered. I called Joel immediately, told him to check his apartment. He called back 20 minutes later. Same thing, subtle signs that someone had been through his place. We'd both been compromised. That's when we made the decision. We couldn't wait any longer to go public. If someone was already monitoring us this closely, it was only a matter of time before they found ways to discredit us or make our evidence disappear. We needed to release what we'd found while we still could. Sarah Delgado helped us craft a comprehensive report. It included our video footage, sensor data, photographs of the landing sites, analysis from Professor Mendoza, and testimony from Colonel Hayes. We compiled everything into a detailed document that laid out the facts clearly and scientifically, without speculation or conspiracy theories. Just the evidence, presented objectively. We scheduled a press conference in El Paso for next week. Sarah reached out to journalists she trusted, researchers who'd expressed interest in similar phenomena, even some government officials who'd been asking questions about unexplained aerial phenomena. We were going to present everything we'd documented over the past 2 years, and we were going to do it publicly enough that it couldn't be easily suppressed. Last night, Joel and I went back to the primary site one more time. We wanted to check our equipment, make sure everything was still functioning properly for tonight's scheduled appearance of the lights, and we wanted to document one more cycle before we went public. The equipment was all there, still operational. The cameras were recording, the sensors were calibrated, everything was ready. We sat in my truck, waiting for 10:47 p.m., watching the desert landscape in the darkness. "You nervous about next week?" Joel asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "We're about to put our careers on the line. Maybe our freedom if someone decides we violated some classification law we didn't know existed. You think we're doing the right thing?" I thought about that question, about the 2 years we'd spent documenting these lights, about all the people throughout history who'd seen similar phenomena and been dismissed or ridiculed, about the possibility that we were on the edge of understanding something fundamental about our universe. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think whatever this is, people deserve to know about it. Even if we can't explain it, even if it challenges everything we think we know about physics and reality, the truth is worth the risk." At 10:47 p.m. exactly, the light appeared. Right on schedule, exactly where our data predicted it would be. We watched it split into three, watched the three spheres pulse and dance through their 17-minute cycle, watched them merge and descend into the ground. Our equipment recorded everything. Every electromagnetic spike, every underground vibration, every frame of video. The pattern continued, precise and unexplained, indifferent to our attempts to understand it. When the lights vanished at 11:04 p.m., Joel and I sat in silence for a moment. "Ready to tell the world?" he asked. "Ready as I'll ever be." We're releasing our findings in 5 days. Everything we've documented, everything we've learned, all the evidence we've collected will be made public. We're prepared for skepticism, for criticism, for the possibility that we'll be dismissed as delusional or attention-seeking. But we're also prepared for the possibility that we're right, that these lights represent something real, something significant, something that challenges our understanding of what's possible. And if we're right, then this story is bigger than just two Border Patrol agents watching mysteries in the desert. This story is about the universe being stranger than we ever imagined, about phenomena that operate on principles we don't understand yet, about the courage it takes to document the impossible and share it with the world. My name is Mateo Sanchez. In 5 days, everyone will know what Joel and I have been documenting for the past 2 years. Some will believe us. Many won't. But the evidence will be out there, available for anyone who wants to examine it. The lights will keep appearing every 28 days, splitting into 3, descending into the desert floor. The pattern will continue whether anyone believes in it or not. Because whatever these lights are, they're not dependent on our understanding or acceptance. They just are. And now, finally, people will know about them. But I need to tell you what happened yesterday. What happened that's made me question whether going public is the right decision, or if we're about to make a terrible mistake. Joel and I went back to the site one more time, 3 days before our scheduled press conference. We wanted to collect the final batch of data, make sure all our equipment was functioning properly, get one last set of recordings to include in our presentation. We arrived around sunset, the sky painted in shades of orange and purple over the desert. The temperature was dropping as darkness fell, and there was this quality to the air, heavy, expectant, like the desert itself was waiting for something. We checked all the cameras, downloaded the latest footage, calibrated the sensors. Everything was working perfectly. The next appearance of the lights was scheduled for tonight at 10:47 p.m., exactly on the 28-day cycle we'd documented so carefully. While we were working, Joel noticed something odd about one of the circular marks on the ground, the landing sites we'd documented 2 years ago. "Mateo, come look at this." I walked over to where he was crouched near the center of one of the circles. The soil there had changed since our last visit. The glassy, crystalline quality had intensified, and now there was something else. Patterns. Geometric patterns etched into the surface of the crystallized soil, so fine you could barely see them unless the light hit them just right. "Are those new?" I asked. "They weren't here last week. I would have noticed." Joel pulled out his phone and took close-up photographs. The patterns were intricate, mathematical, concentric circles intersected by radial lines, creating a mandala-like design. And in the very center, there was a symbol I didn't recognize. It looked almost like a letter or character from an alphabet I'd never seen. We found the same patterns in the other 2 circles, all identical, all new, all suggesting that something had changed at the site. The phenomenon wasn't just repeating the same pattern anymore. It was evolving, leaving new marks, new messages, if that's what they were. "This changes things," Joel said quietly. "This is active communication. Something is trying to tell us something." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert temperature. He was right. For 2 years, we'd been documenting a repeating pattern, treating it like a natural phenomenon we were trying to understand. But these symbols suggested intention, intelligence, deliberate communication. Whatever was creating those lights, it was aware, and it was trying to convey information. We spent the next 2 hours photographing and documenting the symbols from every angle. Joel even made rubbings, pressing paper over the patterns and using charcoal to capture the exact designs. We needed to show this to someone who understood ancient languages, mathematics, symbolic systems. This was beyond our expertise. As darkness fell completely and we waited for 10:47 p.m., I couldn't stop staring at those symbols. What were they trying to say? Were they a warning, an invitation, instructions for something we didn't understand? At 10:45 p.m., our equipment started registering the familiar electromagnetic spikes. The seismograph showed the underground vibrations beginning. Everything was following the expected pattern. Joel and I positioned ourselves with clear views of the sky, cameras ready. 10:47 p.m. arrived, and nothing happened. The electromagnetic readings were off the charts. The underground vibrations were stronger than we'd ever recorded. But the sky remained empty. No light appeared. For the first time in 32 documented cycles, the pattern broke. What's going on? Joel was checking all our equipment, making sure everything was functioning properly. Is our timing off? No, everything's synchronized to atomic clocks. This is when they should appear. I scanned the sky, looking for any sign of the lights. Nothing. The electromagnetic readings suddenly spiked to levels we'd never seen before. So high that 2 of our sensors shut down to protect their circuits. The underground vibrations intensified until I could actually feel them through the soles of my boots, a deep thrumming that made my teeth ache. And then the ground began to glow. Not the sky, the ground. The 3 circular marks started emitting light from within, a soft blue-white radiance that grew brighter by the second. The symbols we'd photographed earlier began to pulse, each line and curve lighting up in sequence like some kind of activation code. Joel, we need to back up. We retreated to the truck, but we kept our cameras running, recording everything. The 3 circles of light intensified until they were almost painful to look at directly. And then, from the center of each circle, something began to emerge. It wasn't the lights we'd been documenting. It was something else, something solid. 3 metallic structures rose from the ground, ascending slowly from the circles like they were being pushed up from below. They were cylindrical, about 6 feet tall and 2 feet in diameter, with smooth surfaces that reflected the glow from the circles in strange ways. The reflection seemed to move independently of the objects themselves. The structures stopped rising when they were about 3 feet above the ground, hovering there without any visible support. The symbols on the ground pulsed faster now, and I could hear a sound, not through my ears, but inside my head. A tone, complex and layered, that made images flash through my mind. Mathematical equations I didn't understand. Geometric shapes rotating in dimensions I couldn't quite perceive. And something else, a sense of vast distance, of looking across an impossible gulf and seeing something looking back. Joel grabbed my arm. Are you hearing that? Seeing that? Yeah. My voice came out hoarse. What is it? Before he could answer, the 3 cylinders began to glow, not with the blue-white light of the circles, but with that familiar orange light we'd documented for 2 years. The light built in intensity, and then each cylinder split, just like the aerial lights had always split, creating multiple smaller points of light that arranged themselves in precise geometric patterns around each structure. And then I understood. The lights we'd been seeing in the sky, they weren't separate phenomena. They were the same as these structures, just operating in a different medium. The aerial lights were somehow connected to these underground installations, maybe projections from them, maybe scouts sent out from a central base. The splitting pattern we documented wasn't random behavior. It was how these things reproduced or distributed themselves. The structures began to sink back into the ground, the lights fading, the vibrations decreasing. Within 2 minutes, they had completely disappeared, leaving only the glowing circles. And then those faded too, until we were left in normal darkness with only our equipment lights illuminating the desert. Joel and I sat in the truck, neither of us speaking for a long time. Our equipment had recorded everything. The electromagnetic spikes, the underground emergence, the structures themselves. We had documentation of something far more significant than lights in the sky. We had evidence of actual physical objects emerging from beneath the desert floor. We can't release this, Joel said finally. What? Think about it, Matteo. We were going to go public with mysterious lights. That's one thing. But this, he gestured toward where the structures had appeared, this is proof of something actively installed underground in U.S. territory. This isn't just a phenomenon to study. This is infrastructure, technology, something that's been deliberately placed here. I knew he was right, but I didn't want to admit it. So, what do we do? I don't know. But if we release this footage at a press conference, within 24 hours, this site will be swarming with military, intelligence agencies, probably scientists from every government lab in the country. They'll cordon off the entire area. They'll confiscate all our data, and we'll probably both end up in a room somewhere being debriefed for the next 6 months. Maybe that's what should happen. Maybe this is too big for just us to handle. Joel shook his head. You saw those symbols. Something is trying to communicate. And whatever it is, it chose this location, this timing, this method. If we bring the government in, they'll approach it as a security threat. They'll dig up those structures, try to reverse engineer them, weaponize them if they can. Is that really what we want? I thought about the image that had flashed through my mind during that strange transmission. The sense of vast distance, of something reaching across space or time or dimensions to make contact. Joel was right. This wasn't a threat. It was communication. And we might be the only ones in a position to understand it on those terms. We need more time, I said. We need to study those symbols, try to understand what they're telling us. And we need to see if this happens again, if the pattern continues or if it's changed permanently. So, we cancel the press conference? It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but I nodded. We cancel it, for now. We tell Sarah and the others that we need more time to verify our data. And we come back here. We monitor this site, and we try to understand what just happened. Joel looked relieved. Thank you. I know you wanted to go public, but I really think we're on the edge of understanding something important. If we bring the whole world into this now, we might never get the chance to figure it out. We spent the rest of that night reviewing our recordings, taking detailed notes, trying to process what we'd witnessed. The footage was clear, undeniable documentation of physical structures emerging from the ground. The electromagnetic data showed patterns we'd never seen before. The symbols in the crystallized soil were obviously artificial, obviously designed. We were no longer just documenting unexplained lights. We were in contact with something intelligent, something that had been using the desert as a communication point for who knows how long. The next morning, I called Sarah Delgado and told her we were postponing the press conference. She wasn't happy about it. She'd already lined up journalists and researchers, but she accepted our decision. Professor Mendoza was disappointed, but understanding. Colonel Hayes just said, "Be careful what you're getting into, son. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed again." That was 3 days ago. Joel and I have been back to the site twice since then, during daylight, documenting those symbols in exhaustive detail. We've sent photographs to linguists, mathematicians, cryptographers, always carefully, always through secure channels, never explaining the full context. One mathematician wrote back saying the patterns contain prime number sequences. A linguist suggested they might be a form of base 12 counting system. A physicist noticed that some of the geometric patterns match theoretical models of higher dimensional space, but none of them can tell us what the symbols mean, what message is being conveyed, what the structures underground are for, why this location, why this timing, why now after decades or centuries of just showing lights in the sky. Tomorrow is supposed to be the next 28-day cycle, 10:47 p.m. The lights should appear again. Or the structures will emerge again. Or something entirely new will happen. Joel and I will be there, cameras ready, trying to understand. We're still going to go public eventually. We still believe people deserve to know about this. But we want to understand it first. We want to know what we're really revealing before we reveal it. Because I think Joel was right. This isn't just a phenomenon to document and study. This is active contact with something beyond our current understanding. And how we handle this contact, how we interpret it and respond to it, might be one of the most important decisions humanity has ever faced. My name is Mateo Sanchez. I'm a Border Patrol agent who started documenting mysterious lights 2 years ago. Now I'm documenting something far more significant. Evidence of intelligent design, deliberate placement, active communication from something that operates by rules we don't understand yet. The lights still split into 3, but now we know they're not just lights. They're windows, or signals, or projections from something deeper. Something that's been here longer than we realized, waiting for us to notice, to document, to try to understand. We're trying, we're watching, we're listening, and tomorrow night at 10:47 p.m., we'll see what message comes next. But I can't end this account without telling you what happened last night. What happened that's made me realize we may be out of our depth, that this situation is far more complex than Joel and I ever imagined. It was around midnight. I was at home, going through the symbol photographs for the 100th time, when someone knocked on my door. Not a normal knock. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The same pattern we'd heard on our radio that first night. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-50s, professional appearance, holding what looked like a government ID. My first thought was that someone had finally come to shut down our investigation. But something made me open the door. "Agent Sanchez," she said, not waiting for me to confirm my identity. "My name is Dr. Patricia Morrison. I work for a department you've never heard of, doing work I can't fully describe, but I'm here because you and Agent Gutierrez have stumbled onto something that's been under observation for a very long time. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. The lights, the patterns, the structures that emerged 3 days ago. We know all about it because we've been studying the same phenomenon for 40 years, and we need to talk before you make any more decisions about going public." I should have closed the door. Should have told her to come back with a warrant. But curiosity won. I let her in. Dr. Morrison sat at my kitchen table and pulled out a tablet. "What I'm about to show you is classified at levels you don't have clearance for. But circumstances have forced our hand. You and Gutierrez have documented the phenomenon more thoroughly than anyone in the past 2 decades. Your data is actually better than ours in many respects. So, we're going to read you in, unofficially, and hope you'll make the right decision." She pulled up files on the tablet. Photographs, videos, sensor readings. All documenting the same lights Joel and I had been studying. But these files went back to 1979. 45 years of continuous observation, all classified, all hidden from public view. "Why?" I asked. "Why keep this secret?" "Because we don't know what it is," Dr. Morrison said simply. "We've had our best minds analyzing this for decades. Physicists, linguists, mathematicians, even anthropologists and philosophers. And we still don't have a definitive answer. What we do know is that the phenomenon is global. It appears in 17 different locations worldwide, all following similar patterns. And we know that it's been happening for a very long time. We've found historical records dating back to the 1700s describing the same lights in the same locations." She showed me more files. Locations in Norway, Australia, Peru, Morocco, all with documented light phenomena matching what we'd seen, all showing the same patterns of splitting and merging, the same electromagnetic anomalies, the same underground connections. "The symbols you found," she continued, "those appeared at 6 other sites simultaneously 3 days ago. All identical, all new." It's the first time in our 45 years of observation that the phenomenon has left deliberate markings. Something has changed. The phenomenon is evolving, or accelerating, or entering a new phase. We don't know which. What do you want from me? I want you to understand what you're dealing with before you go public. Because if you hold that press conference, if you release your data, you're not just revealing a mystery. You're forcing governments worldwide to acknowledge something they've been studying in secret for decades. You're changing the entire paradigm of how humanity relates to unexplained phenomena. Are you prepared for those consequences? I sat back, trying to process everything she'd told me. You're asking me to help cover this up. No. I'm asking you to be strategic about revelation. We're not asking you to stay silent forever, just to coordinate with us on how and when this information is released. There are protocols, procedures, ways to reveal extraordinary information without causing mass panic or destabilizing institutions. Or you just want to maintain control of the information. Dr. Morrison didn't deny it. Both things can be true. Yes, we want to maintain some level of control, but we also genuinely believe that uncontrolled revelation of this phenomenon could cause serious harm. Religious upheaval, economic instability, social panic. These are real concerns, not just bureaucratic paranoia. She pulled up one more file. There's something else you should know. 4 years ago, a researcher in Peru went public with his documentation of the lights there. Held a press conference, released video, the whole thing. Within a week, he was dead. Officially a heart attack. But our analysis suggests he was murdered. Not by us, she added quickly. By someone else. Someone who wants this phenomenon kept secret for their own reasons. Who? We don't know. There's another group. Another organization operating independently. They're more aggressive than we are, more willing to use extreme measures. If you go public, you need to understand that you're putting yourself and Agent Gutierrez at risk from parties beyond government control. After she left, giving me a secure number to call if I wanted to coordinate further, I sat at my kitchen table for hours, thinking about everything she'd said. Was she telling the truth? Was there really a global conspiracy to hide this phenomenon? Or was this an elaborate attempt to intimidate me into silence? I called Joel and told him everything. He was quiet for a long time after I finished. "Do you believe her?" he finally asked. "I don't know. Some of what she said makes sense. The global distribution, the historical records, the concern about controlled revelation. But the part about someone murdering researchers? That feels like a scare tactic. Maybe, or maybe it's real." Joel sighed. "Mateo, I think we need to be very careful here. Whether Dr. Morrison is legitimate or not, whether her warnings are real or fabricated, the fact is that we've documented something significant. And significant things attract dangerous attention. So what do? We keep documenting, we keep trying to understand. But we're more careful about who we talk to, where we store our data, how we communicate. And we think very, very carefully before we make any public revelations. That conversation was yesterday. Today, Joel and I met with Sarah Delgado and told her everything. Dr. Morrison's visit, the classified files, the warnings about danger. Sarah's reaction surprised me. "I've heard rumors about something like this," she said. "An organization that monitors unexplained phenomena globally. I could never confirm it, never got concrete proof. But if what Dr. Morrison told you is true, it explains a lot. Why certain stories never gain traction. Why researchers sometimes disappear from public view. Why there's always this wall of silence around certain topics. Do you think we should work with them?" Joel asked. "I think you should be very careful about trusting anyone at this point, including me." Sarah managed a wry smile. You've documented something real, something important, that makes you valuable to multiple parties, some who want to study it, some who want to suppress it, some who might want to weaponize it. Your best protection is to make sure your data is widely distributed and secured so that silencing you doesn't silence the information. Which brings me to why I'm writing this final addendum to our account. This document, with all our observations and experiences, is being distributed to multiple parties. Researchers we trust, journalists with established reputations, even a few government officials who've shown genuine interest in unexplained phenomena. If anything happens to Joel or me, the information won't die with us. Tonight is the next scheduled appearance. 28 days since the underground structures emerged, since the symbols appeared, since the pattern changed. Joel and I will be at the site with our equipment, documenting whatever happens. But we're also taking precautions. Multiple cameras in hidden locations, encrypted uploads to cloud servers, emergency contacts who will be alerted if we don't check in by midnight. We're walking a fine line now, trying to understand something extraordinary while protecting ourselves from multiple potential threats, trying to be responsible about revelation while not becoming complicit in suppression. It's more complicated than I ever imagined it would be when we first saw those lights split in the night sky 2 years ago. My name is Mateo Sanchez. Joel Gutierrez and I have documented something that challenges our understanding of reality. We've seen lights that split with mathematical precision, structures that emerge from beneath the desert floor, symbols that may represent communication from something beyond our current comprehension. We don't have all the answers. We may never have all the answers. But we have the documentation, the evidence, the proof that something extraordinary is happening in the darkness over the Rio Grande. This account is our insurance policy, our legacy, our contribution to humanity's understanding of the universe we inhabit. If we disappear, if our investigation is shut down, if the evidence is suppressed, at least this record will exist. The lights will appear tonight at 10:47 p.m. The pattern will continue, or it will change again. Either way, we'll be there to witness it, to document it, to try to understand it. And someday, when the time is right, when we've gathered enough evidence and understanding, when we've figured out how to reveal this information responsibly, the world will know what we've discovered. The splitting light is real, the underground structures are real, the symbols are real, and whatever intelligence is behind them has been trying to communicate with us for longer than we've been paying attention. We're paying attention now. We're listening. We're watching. And we're preparing for whatever comes next. The desert keeps its secrets, but not forever. The truth is patient, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. And that moment is coming, whether through our efforts or through the phenomenon itself deciding to make itself undeniably known. Until then, we watch, we document, we survive, and we hope that when revelation finally comes, humanity will be ready for it. The lights split, the structures emerge, the symbols speak in languages we're only beginning to comprehend. And somewhere in all of that impossible beauty and mystery, there's an answer to questions we haven't quite learned to ask yet. We're learning. Slowly, carefully, we're learning. And when we've learned enough, when we understand enough, when the time is finally right, everyone will know what Joel and I have known for these past 2 years. The universe is stranger than we ever imagined, and it's been trying to tell us that all along.